We are ready to start, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Paso Robles Sunrise first annual Peace is Possible conference. We're very glad that all of you are here today and really excited about this opportunity to bring a lot of folks in to talk to us about a lot of different aspects of peace. My name is Dan Mead, and I'll be your host for today's conference. And we're actually kicking off Peace Week. If you hadn't heard about it, this is the start of Peace Week. We're a day early, which is kind of appropriate for the Paso Robles Sunrise Club. So we're a little bit early getting that started, but we're on the threshold of Peace Week. And that's ending with International Peace Day, which occurs on September 21st. So that's something that is celebrated around the world and is an important day. So that's why this is happening right now. And we're here today to talk, listen, and learn more about what peace is and how we bring it to our lives, community, nation, and world. And today's conference, the topics that we have and the people that are here will touch on all of those areas. And it's my hope that you'll leave with actions that you can take to bring more peace and happiness to your lives and to the lives of others. And to start off our conference, we're really honored here to have Richard Bloomquist with us today. Dick is a World War II veteran, and he's one of the founders of the Paso Peace Committee here in Paso Robles. And we're very honored to have you today, Dick, to address us at the start of the conference. All right. So would you like to come up, or can you come up? Or would you like to just do it where you are?
Bring him the microphone.
Yeah, we got a mic for you.
Yes.
Sure. You got it, Dick?
Yep. Okay, can you hear me? Perhaps we have reached a time in our national history to ask some questions about our Pledge of Allegiance. What does it mean to pledge allegiance, and to what or who? Are we pledging service to or participating in the country or a cause? Is serving in the military the only way to serve our country? The United States of America is a nation of many ethnic backgrounds. When we find a way to live in harmony, we will become an even greater inspiration for world peace. For conclusion, I would like to use the ending of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Lincoln concludes that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Now, I'd like for a minute of silence for meditation. Now, it's appropriate to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And face the flag, place one hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Dick. And folks don't know, Dick is 101 years old. So before we move right into our speakers, we have a little housekeeping to do. And just so you know, if everybody has a program, the program has the schedule of events today. It also has a page with speaker topics. And then there's a bio in here for a lot of the different speakers, so I encourage you to look at that. That allows me not to have to do full bios on folks, so we can move along to our pretty aggressive schedule today. And that includes the La Quinta Inn and Suites here, and Victor Pop, who's been an enormous help and provided this venue for us. And thank you very much to Karen Brandon and Ken Campbell for the event last night. They opened their house for the event last night. We're very grateful for that. The sponsors of the event are Althouse and Mead, Inc., which are a bunch of biologists, if you don't know, and the Graham Realty, Kate Graham and Nancy Fisk, Guardian Properties and Management Service, Jocelyn Bear. Thank you, Jocelyn. Michael and Marlies Gould. Thank you very much, Mike. Idler's Home, Merrill Lynch, Platinum Properties, Heather Rhoda, the Rotary Club of Paso Robles Noontime. Remember, we are the Sunrise Club. They are not. And also the Rotary Clubs of District 5240, Group 11. And so we thank you very much. All those clubs contributed to being a sponsor. We have other donors for this event too, which we're very appreciative of. Richard Bloomquist, Gerald Iverson, Frank Joyce and Mary Barnett, Rose Lisani, Drew Lewis, and California Meridian Insurance, Paso Peace Community, and the Mankey Family Chiropractic. So we're very grateful for all the support people have provided. Thanks. And now I would like to introduce to you somebody who I don't know if needs much of an introduction because it seems like everybody in San Luis Obispo County knows you, Nancy. Nancy Fisk, and she is the current president of the Rotary Club of Paso Robles Sunrise and is here to give us a bit about the genesis of Why Peace Conference. So Nancy, please come up.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning. Is this projecting? Good. With my voice, you need that. I was sitting next to a very dear friend, and when Dan said we're Sunrise Rotary, we were on it early, Rob said, it's never too early for peace. So true. Thank you for that. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for being here. We are living in very challenging, difficult times. The facts that we think we know are being challenged. We have difficulty penetrating and studying the issues to find the real truth of the matter. And sometimes with all that study, we're still not on solid ground. Rotary is built on a foundation of truth and benefit and fairness and giving. So it's very appropriate that we stand here today in this very first peace conference, and there will be more, and they will be bigger, and they will carry the same consistent message. Peace is possible. Paul, thank you for that. We took your theme and we built on it, and we believe peace is possible. We also believe that we are, and this isn't coming from Rotary, but it's a happy coincidence, we are all spokes in a wheel. We start in the center, and if we're doing the living right, we radiate out strength through those spokes to everyone that we touch. The hub of the wheel holds us together, each of our spokes affects the person next to us and the person next to them and the state next to them and the country next to them. We want you today, we pray, we believe that you will leave here with at least one tool that I challenge you to practice today after you walk away from this conference. People will not remember what you said. They may not always remember what you did, but they will always and forever remember how you made them feel. We believe that peace begins with communication. It becomes a situation where we share each other's stories. Instead of moving to judgment, which is not ours, as far as I'm concerned, and we don't let the conversation continue, we flee, either out of fear or lack of information, but we don't stop and talk to each other and learn our stories. We've been conditioned to possibly run away from, possibly make decisions that are not accurate. But if we're true to our spoke and back to our hub, we will reach out to that person that we don't understand, that might be different than we are, that might have done something that doesn't look too correct to us. But talk about it. What a concept. Talk about it. Earlier in the room, we were talking about how initially, speaking for myself, email felt cold and impersonal. I'm getting used to it. There's manners in email, and there's conventions that we follow to make the written word friendly and inviting, not harsh, not judgmental. We have put together a program for you today that is not like the Paris Peace Accords. No, we're here in Paso Robles, and we want to have Paso Robles be the absolute hub of where we move out from. And if you've traveled here from other places, that's your hub. And then you move out from there in peace and welcome and dignity and respect. We have been recognized by the First District of Board of Supervisors for San Luis Obispo County, and we have a proclamation from them declaring this first peace conference a momentous occasion. Our mayor has also given us a proclamation recognizing our work in the peace community, and our work will continue. Rotary International, 1.2 million people strong and growing, I'm happy to say, growing, will carry this message until we have done the same thing for peace that Rotary and the Rotary Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and many other generous donors around the world have done for polio. We have taken polio from the late 1980s, where there were over 300,000 cases in our world of this devastating disease, down to 3 countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria. Children around the world, with the exception of those 3 areas, will not live in fear of polio, of the rest of their life being affected by this devastating disease. We can do the same thing for peace, and we will. We absolutely will. We will reach out. We will talk to one another. We also have a segment of our program today that talks about how we are in our whole, living on a planet with living trees and plants and sentient beings that we call animals, voiceless, but totally in need of a voice. Extend to them the same opportunity you extend to other sentient beings. They're not going to respond like humans, possibly, but they're going to feel the positivity of your compassion and your caring, and that is going to nurture your hub. Your spoke is strengthened. We're going to learn how our law enforcement practices a peaceful, safe way of keeping our communities safe and pleasant, and yet doing a very, very difficult job. Thank you, Ty, for being here. So I invite you to look at your hub, your heart. Look at your spokes. What is your spoke going to do today and tomorrow and the days after? How is your hub going to be transferred to those coming after us? How will we learn the literacy of peace? Thank you, Paul. And how will we practice it? This isn't just an exercise in spending a Friday at an event. This is a life experience that will change our community, our world, and the lives of those that follow us. I thank you all for being here. The Rotary Club of Paso Robles Sunrise is over the moon with this conference, with our mission. We are so grateful to everyone that Dan recognized earlier. This is the beginning of something big. Please do keep your hub and your mind tuned up. We're going to go out of here bigger and better than we walked in. Thank you.
Wade Nomura is here. Wade is a past district governor, and he is the Rotary Foundation Project Technical Coordinator. And what that means is Wade goes all over the world and is a very busy guy looking at technical projects that Rotary is supporting. He's participated in over 34 international projects, and probably more by now. And he included many water projects, development projects, and among other activities, Wade's the vice mayor or mayor pro tem of the city of Carpinteria. So he is one busy guy. We really appreciate Wade joining us today and share his experience and thoughts on dealing with adversity and Rotary peace-building efforts. Please welcome Wade Nomura.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Dan, Nancy, and Lynn D. Thank you. Yeah, you're a little taller than I am. For inviting me, by the way. This year I'll be in a total of 16 different countries, and this one window fit perfectly in my schedule, so appreciate that. I'm going to be speaking on adversity, dealing with adversity based on personal history. My family were interned during World War II, and I want to share that with you. The reason I want to share this with you is because peace starts with the awareness and speaking about those specific items that affect us in daily life. Oftentimes we don't look at issues and items based on a peace or a conflict resolution type of situation. So because of that, I'm going to jump into this. I'm going to go through some of this. I will then tell you how Rotary International is working with the peace initiatives and changes it's going to make. And after that, hopefully we'll have enough time for some questions. So the first one is dealing with adversity. Now, the reason I'm bringing this one up as my first topic is because when I was in junior high school in 7th grade, my teacher, my history teacher, actually asked if there's anybody that knew somebody that was in a concentration camp during World War II. I raised my hand, and the teacher says, well, who do you know? I says, well, my parents. My family were interned during World War II. And she quickly said, that's a lie because it never showed up in the textbooks. And because of that, I was given detention for a week. Fortunately, she wasn't from the West Coast. She had no idea. And the principal came and actually pulled me back out and said, you go home. We need to talk to the teacher. So it was resolved. Conflict resolution at its finest. Right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Executive Order 9066 was issued, and this was written by Roosevelt at that time. And the actual issuance was that any Japanese Americans that were living on the western coast were to be interned, detained, and placed in protective custody, is what they called it at that time, which was actually to make sure that there was no influence of sabotage within the western states. What happened was, and my parents were included in this, all of the Japanese Americans were then brought together one day, specific day, and they were moved from one location to another, not knowing where they were going to be. The total number of displaced was 120,000 people on the western states. Some of them, like my wife's parents, actually, they snuck out during the night and they traveled to the east to get to, I think it was Grand Junction, Colorado, where they found sanctuary there. The rest of them actually followed the orders because they were actually breaking the law and were interned into specific camps. They were asked to meet in locations. Los Angeles was probably the biggest one. They met actually at the Santa Anita racetracks. And from there, they were bussed in, put on cattle cars, and taken to different areas of the western states, including most of them ended up in either Manzanar or Poston, Arizona. This is a picture of what it looked like. This is actually Santa Anita Raceway. At that time, the people were told that they had 24 hours to pick up their personal belongings. Anything that they can carry or put into a suitcase could not be anything like a radio, camera, anything sharp or anything like that. And everything else was to be left at the house and be put under protective, protection by the federal government, which we found out later was definitely not the case. These people here are actually jumping on the train. Every person was searched to make sure that there was nothing in their radios or sharp instruments or weapons. One of the locations they went to is Hot Mountain, Wyoming, and actually there is now a national monument placed there. There will be an actual replica of that, similar to what you see at Manzanar. The number of evacuees, I told you, is about 120,000 displaced. And these are the different camps that you'll see. And if you notice, they're all quite the resort locations around the world here. Exactly. Well, not especially, pretty much all of them. The construction of these ones, and we'll go into that one, was actually done by the military and federal government. But these are the locations. You will then see the total number of each and every one of the locations in sight. Poston, Arizona is where my parents were actually interned at, and there were 2 camps there. This was actually right next to the Indian reservation, and it was fairly harsh living conditions in pretty much all of these places that you do see. Part of the isolation or taking of these people was that there was a concern of national threat. And by the way, what they told the Japanese Americans at the time is that they were being brought into protective custody because there was concerns that there was going to be retaliation by the people living in the western states. For example, there were 1 or 2 incidences where the Filipino families actually jumped out and killed some of the Japanese. And so that was their justification for that. That was the idea, that was the intent, that's what was told to the Japanese Americans. When we say national threat, there was a questionnaire that went out, and I'm going to go over this with you because this is kind of interesting. Most of you probably have not heard about this one. But a questionnaire went out to each and every adult that was being interned into these camps. Question number 27 on that is, will you be willing to serve in the armed forces of the United States on combat duty where ordered? Now, you had the choice of either checking that as a yes or a no. The second question that became very controversial is question number 28. Will you swear your unqualified allegiance to the United States of America and faithfully defend the United States from any or all attack by foreign or domestic forces and forswear any form of allegiance or obedience to the Japanese Emperor or other foreign government powers or organizations? And so that would be the second question. Now, if you look at the 2 questions, the first question, some of the people that checked the no box were wondering if, in fact, they were going to be deployed as one of the first to go into Japan as an invasion of that group because they were, quote, expendable and they knew and understood the culture. The second question here had to do with obedience and swearing your allegiance to the United States. You have to figure that a lot of these people, these were not actually U.S. citizens. They still had citizenships in Japan. They were not allowed or given or granted the citizenship of the United States. So for them to check the second box meant that they would have no country. And so they put no to those 2. We called these the people that actually checked those boxes, and they're mostly men. I believe the questionnaire went to mostly the adult males in the family and households. Those that checked the two boxes, no and no, were known as the no-no boys. Where they went to, they were very specific. If you check those two, they were isolated out from the groups. They were taken into custody, and actually they were shipped back someplace in Arkansas, where we don't know exactly where that would be. Documentation does not show where, in fact, these quote camps were. It's a probability, actually a strong possibility, that they were actually taken into federal penitentiaries. Of those people that went out and into these quote camps, about 50% of them came back. The other ones, we have no documentation of what happened to them. It was said by the people that they were shipped back to Japan, but there's no documentation of that. There's one friend of mine that I know, a family friend, whose father actually was detained. He came back towards the end of the war, and the family said, quote, when he came back, he looked 10 years older. He left as a 40-year-old. He came back looking actually more than that. They said he looked like a 70-year-old, and he did not live more than a year after that time. Never said a word of what happened to him in that time. So again, part of the covering up of history makes it interesting. We should have that awareness, because with that awareness comes the ability to create that peace. Without that, we just can't do anything about it. Living conditions. I'm going to go real quick over these. Living conditions there, as you could imagine, you have the hottest hot and the coldest cold in most of these locations. This is a picture, and by the way, I'm going to show you why the pictures are not first class or quality pictures, but there's a reason for that. This is one of the camps. They were told that they're taken in for protection for themselves. However, when they got there, all of the turrets and all the barbed wire were pointing and facing in the wrong direction. So they realized, well, yeah, nope, we've been herded in here in cattle cars, and this is going to be where we're going to be staying for a while. This is what the camps look like in the middle of the desert. They popped these things up. They were single wall construction, mostly made out of tar paper, one layer of wood, and a roof. And if you see the barracks, there were actually there were no walls in between these. And sometimes as many as 4 families would live in each one of these units. And so what they did was they actually had to take the blankets and actually create partitions so that the family would have some sort of privacy, because they just threw them all into one specific barrack. This is what it looked like inside of these barracks. This was actually one of the men's barracks. Those that were single males, single females would have their own specific barracks. There were also family barracks, as you see here. My mother talked about getting into post in Arizona, and when she was there, they gave her blankets and they gave her gunny sacks. And the gunny sacks were to be filled with hay, and that was going to be their mattress, basically what they slept on for a few weeks. Later on, it came to where they did get the beds, but it took about a week or two for that to actually occur. This was pretty much an emergency run. So what did they do in those 4 years? Life went on as normal. If you could imagine taking a section or segment of a community, these were Japanese Americans, you would find that you have doctors, you have lawyers, you have teachers, you have medical staff, you have community leaders, you have pretty much everything. And so what they did was they created cities within each of these camps. People that had experience in specific areas would then jump into and take charge of that area that they were knowing, well, they best knew. And so that's how camp life occurred. Pretty much became normal. There were Boy Scouts, there were pretty much anything you could think of in normal life. This is Toyo Miyatake. He was a, quote, disciple of Ansel Adams, and the pictures that you see, a lot of these were actually taken by him. Now remember, I said no cameras were allowed into these camps. What he did was he smuggled in camera lenses, and he used a shoebox to take these pictures. People actually sent him in a little bit of film. He could do the filming, but he did everything out of a shoebox. That's why you have, quote, the quality of a lot of these photos being questionable, but that's what he did. Later on, he did get a camera. One of the people, even though Roosevelt was the one that signed the Declaration, the executive order, his wife Eleanor was instrumental in helping out. She assisted a lot of these camps. She would visit the camps, bring them food, check with them, and make sure that what they needed were being handled and taken care of. So it kind of worked as opposite sides of the family. Now, Eleanor, by the way, does not get a lot of credit for that, but she is the one, actually, that changed a lot of the living conditions in these camps. So I talked about sports, education, things like that. A lot of them if you think back at that time, there were also people that were in the camp that were taken away from school. So they were seniors in high school, they're getting ready to start college, and so they were eliminated from the curriculum system that the states would have. So some of them actually were deprived of education, college educations. However, some of them did go back. A lot of them did go back to help that out. The bottom one is patriotic duty. And an interesting phenomenon occurred in that time. A lot of the ones that could not go back to school said, well, we're going to go and enlist in the military because we want to make a difference. We are still Americans, and even though we've just been displaced here, we want to make a difference. We want to fight for the U.S. And so they enlisted into the military. This group here went into Europe. It's a 442nd, as you know, it was a pretty famous group, and this is some of the accolades that they did. And it was an amazing group of gentlemen. Some of them, very few of them are still alive. One of them that was recently passed away was Senator Danny Noe. And I don't know if any of you got to meet him, but you'll remember he had one arm and one leg. He had lost his limbs in a hand grenade where he tried to save his people. And great man, very humble, very modest. And if you see a lot of these people, they did it for the reason that they wanted to fight for their country and show that they had loyalty specific to that cause. What happened to them after camp? This was an interesting one. What do you do? A lot of them ended up coming back into the communities, finding out that they had no belongings, no possessions. Everything that was, quote, taken care of ended up disappearing. So they had to start a new life all over again. The H.R. Bill 442 actually was signed by Ronald Reagan. This was what we call redress money, and this was done as compensation for those surviving people that had been in the camps. Actually were given $20,000. Now, my mother said she didn't want the money. She said, there's no way I'm touching that money because it kind of is something we didn't, quote, earn. But she was told, along with the rest of them, that please accept that money because accepting that money means that there's an awareness by the United States and the American people that there was a wrongful act done, and this was a confirmation of that. So they did accept that money. The gentleman that was in charge of that was John Tateshi. I know John quite well. We're brother-in-laws, so he gave me all the background on how hard this fight really was. And so that was it. It was called the Redress Act, and this is actually what happened to that part of it. We have now monuments in Manzanar. It's by Independence, California. For those of you that have been by there, it's definitely a moving one. For those of you that haven't, take a look at that. That pretty much ends the PowerPoint, but I do want to say this. The changes, those things that occurred in my life. In Rotary, to start with, as you heard, I was a district governor. And when I applied for district governorship, I had only been in Rotary for about 5 or 6 years. And I was encouraged to go in for the position of district governor. So I told my mom, I'm applying for district governor. And she goes, what's that? I says, well, it takes care of a fairly large district, 4 counties. And there's Rotarians throughout. And she says, why do you want to do that? And I says, I want to make an impact. I want to be able to make change. I want to create opportunity for Rotarians in this area to have impacts in community and world. And she says, well, think about it. She goes, I wouldn't do it. And I go, well, why is that? She goes, you forget you're Japanese American. And I says, well, what does that have to do with it? And she told me, she goes, because think about it. She goes, it's probably mostly all Caucasian or white organization. I go, well, that's true. She goes, how many minorities have been governor? I said, well, there's a few. There was a few people from India descent, and there was a Korean. Why is that? She goes, it's different. You're Japanese. She goes, none of them fought the U.S. So you got a taint on your shoulder, and you're not going to get the job. So don't be disappointed. I thought to myself, well, that was pretty rough, but I could see where she was coming from because of the fact she had been put in this place, and she still did not feel accepted as an American. And so I actually did. I applied, and I told my mom. I called her. I said, hey, Mom, guess what? I'm going to be a future governor. She actually cried at that point in time because of the fact that she still didn't understand that she would be accepted no matter what her race because she was Japanese. And I thought that was a pretty moving situation, something that changed my life considerably. I never thought about that until that happened to me. Internationally, what's Rotary done? Oh, good. I'm doing pretty good on time here. I got 10 minutes. Internationally, what Rotary has done, if you look at it, In 2010, they put forward the 6 areas of focus, and you'll see them on the wall here. You have community and economic development, you have water and sanitation, you have 6 different one of them. The first one that you will see, the number 1 area of focus, is peace and conflict resolution. That is the number 1. That is the very first one we put up there. Why is that? Because of the importance that peace and bringing this world together have. Rotary has been involved quite a long time in peace. It started way back in 1910. Some of the accomplishments and things that they have done, it was through Rotary that UNESCO was formed. It was through Rotary, believe it or not, that the United Nations was initiated. And at the first United Nations summit, 49 of the original seated people were Rotarians. So Rotary was involved with it way back in those days. To date, Rotary is in over 200 different countries and territories and regions, meaning that it is considerably larger than the United Nations. And in 2007, I had the opportunity to sit down with the United Nations people and talk about what the groups could do together. And what came about was the fact that Rotary could actually work for peace to help the United Nations out, because there are areas that the United Nations could not get into. But that Rotary is already there. So they asked us, and they said, we will back anything you could do, including financially, if you can go in there and create humanitarian projects. We want to make sure that that happens, because that would help us then have an acceptance into these different areas. So it was through Rotary that they saw this vision occurring. Now, our past president, 2012 and 2013, was a gentleman named Suguchi Tanaka from Japan. I had the opportunity to represent him and speak on his behalf in a few areas of the world. The tie I'm wearing right now is a tie of his year. And if you look at it really closely, the actual symbols or design patterns on this tie are the cherry blossom or the peace flower of Japan. He was and is to this day still probably the most active. He was the one that started the first international peace talks or peace conferences for Rotary. I worked with him on a number of these, and I want to share one with you, specific one. I'm right now on the committee, international committee, for what's called the Hiroshima Peace Tree project. And what this was is during the war, World War II, after, when the bombing occurred in Hiroshima, a gentleman came and he spoke. A friend of mine, his name is Jiro Kawatsuma, past governor, Rotarian, and a survivor, actually, of the Hiroshima bombing. He told a story that I want to share with you. It's pretty tragic, where he said that the bombing occurred. He was walking home from school. His parents, or his mother, and 2 sisters were following behind him when the bomb actually hit. He made it back safely with minor burns. His family, his mother and his 2 sisters, came back home, and he could not recognize them. When they walked in the house, only the voice could be recognizable because they were burnt. They all perished within a week's time. He talks about other people walking home down that same street, seeing them where literally their skin sloughed off because there was nothing to hold on to because of a flash burn. Very tragic times. We, United States, can't imagine what that would be like, seeing a whole city wiped out. Well, he told us of a picture. The picture image in his mind was of Hiroshima being blackened. It looked like a planet, a black planet. Nothing was upright, nothing survived, everything was black, no life. The first few rains came, and after the first rain, believe it or not, green started popping up. Some things actually came back. When I talk about the Hiroshima Peace Project, the trees that we are accumulated right now, that I have seeded in at a local nursery in Carpinteria, there are 54, right now there are only 26 left, trees that actually came from the original trees that came back from that Hiroshima bomb. These trees are being given out or actually sent out. There's an application that you have to fill out, and there's a cost for that. But these trees are going to different places in the world where you would honor peace based on a knowledge of what had happened in the past. And so that's why we call it the Hiroshima Peace Tree. My gift to you, to this group, is that I'm going to give you one of the peace trees. So one is going to be for you. Thank you. It's the least I could do for the awareness that you've done. Now, I've got 5 minutes for questions. Yes.
Last year, in may not make it through. But my wife and I we took a cruise, and we went to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and we got to stand at ground zero. And my Rotarians will know that I'm a relatively conservative guy, but when you go through the museum, both of the places, it is just tear-jerking.
Yeah.
So if you ever have a chance to get over there, we did a lot of things. We also went to the Philippines, went to Corregidor, went to Vietnam, out to the tunnels of Cu Chi, and so a lot of things. But when we were standing at the ground zero, it was just amazing to see what was there, but the vibrant city that is still
True.
surrounds it.
Right.
And as a side note, the 442nd, the movie Gung Ho with Heflin is really good. It explains the whole.
Thank you, it does. Any other, yes?
Do you see any parallels between the migrants crossing the border trying to seek asylum, being put in detention camps, and the situation with the Japanese prisoners?
I do, actually. I'm president of the Santa Barbara chapter of the Japanese American Citizens League. It's the oldest, one of the most prestigious of all of the civil rights groups in the United States. We do draw parallels to that. Unfortunately, even though the awareness of these camps isolating people because of their ethnicity, we were hoping we'd be able to change things, but it still occurs. One of the examples I pull out is Guantanamo Bay. We have no idea what's happening over there. There's, other than we know for a fact that they've been isolated because of ethnicity. And that's one of the issues we have. Peace is going to occur when we could have that awareness of what cultures are like, the understandings of cultures. We look at, for example, people, Islamic faith, and we don't quite understand how they fit, their beliefs. Well, they're real people. They're the same as us. Some of them we have are radicals that we've seen. Unfortunately, the radicals taint the picture for everybody. And so we see them in one specific light, even though that's not the case. I wear a pendant, and you'll see when I usually don't wear a coat and tie. It's the Eye of India. This was given me by the leader of the city of Moradabad in India. And he gave this to me actually to watch over me. So there's friendships throughout. We have to take everything down and look at people individually. That's the most important part of it. Yes?
Wait, following up on that, Santa Maria has been under contest regarding them being a sanctuary, holding the line of sanctuary city. And given that you have some relationship with the community there, is there a role for Rotary International to help mitigate that presence and to see whether a sanctuary city might be a good example of working through the problems at the local level?
The problem with sanctuary cities, and this is me politically talking now, as a vice mayor, the issue occurs because there's no true definition of a sanctuary city. One of the reasons why our city, Carpinteria, did not become a sanctuary city is because we were told by the law enforcement, you're going to tie our hands. We know exactly what we are doing. We will be able to work within and without and just take in, quote, the bad guys. We're going to make sure that that doesn't occur. But if it becomes a sanctuary city, it's going to bring awareness in by the federal government, and that may change things, and it's going to tie their hands. So they asked us to work directly with them. So that may be something that we as cities have to take a look at. The idea of bonding together and creating an awareness specifically as the ideals of a sanctuary city is something that's extremely important. However, we may want to come up with a different plan of action. And with that plan of action, Rotary could get involved with it. We have to be very cautious in Rotary because we cannot get involved politically. But if there's a specific goal, agenda, and force, then we can definitely get involved. Yeah, sure. Yes?
I think that you just made a really good point, and maybe just expand on that just a tad about who we are as Rotarians and why we have the ability to go into areas that other organizations could not.
I will do that. Thank you very much. The story I was going to talk about, Tanaka, his theme was peace through service. And I think that is a reflection, and by the way, that is probably the greatest theme I've ever heard in Rotary, peace through service, because as you work within these communities, you gain the awareness, you become, and everything goes away. No longer are you an American. No longer are you an Islamic faith person. You become the person to person because you work directly with people. Everything goes away because of that. So that's where Rotary fits in. Rotary is an organization based on initiatives, based on making a difference, hands-on work to make those differences projects that we do around the world. And by the way, like I said, this year I'll be in, I think 16 different countries. I get to see firsthand how this all works out. And I am not looked upon as an American, even though I look Japanese. I'm looked upon as a Rotarian, and I fit within a family. And when I go into communities, it's the same thing. I fit within a Rotary family that's based on humanitarian efforts to change the world. And I think that's the most important part. So for those of you that are not that familiar with Rotary, take a look at it, because there is one goal and one objective that Rotary has, and that is improving the lives of anybody and anybody they can. That's it. Perfect. Done. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wade. Our next speaker is Ty Lewis. And Ty is the police chief of the city of Paso Robles. He's been a member of the Paso Robles Police Department for 16 years and was named chief of police this year. And I greatly appreciate having the chief here to talk to us today about procedural justice. Please welcome Ty Lewis.
I don't know how to follow Wade's presentation. That was just spectacular, and kind of highlights, the importance of these meetings, because when we all get together and be able to talk about various aspects of what we do for our jobs, what's important to us, I think that it really kind of highlights and underscores, the value in getting everybody together. So for me, I wanted to talk about a particular aspect of policing. It's, we kind of touched on it in Wade's presentation a little bit, about how police are viewed these days, what our role in our communities are, and what I'm doing as a leader within our community to try and facilitate peace. Because I think that that's, when you think about some of the old terms for police officers, we were peace officers is one of the terms for us. So I looked over the agendas and some of the speeches, and I noticed there was a little bit of a theme going on regarding restorative justice. So that's probably something that you'll hear throughout this. Procedural justice is a relative of restorative justice. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's a close relative of procedural justice, of restorative justice. And we're going to talk about police legitimacy. That's another term that you're going to hear me talk about. So I say they're relatives because both restorative and procedural justice seek to strengthen and influence one's social values and law-related behavior. That's what we're really talking about when we talk about law enforcement is behavior. The idea for both is to facilitate people becoming more connected to their feelings of responsibility to other community members. Hopefully, the sense of connectedness motivates people to follow their moral principles and a sense of greater obligation. Ideally, all of these internal motivators facilitate future lawfulness. So with that said, procedural justice emphasizes building community trust. That's what we're talking about. Historically, the majority of Americans remain confident in their local police departments. In 2017, the city of Paso Robles undertook a survey locally to try and figure out how our police department has looked. I'm proud to say that 77% of Paso Roblans rated their police department as excellent or good. However, that isn't the case across the United States. As recently as 2015, only 52% of Americans expressed a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in police. Now, that was a Gallup poll survey, and that matched the low in their 22 years of doing that particular survey. So certainly there's room for improvement as it relates to law enforcement relationships with their community and that sense of legitimacy. The actions of police in certain U.S. cities, we're talking about Ferguson, Missouri, Staten Island, New York, and North Charleston, South Carolina, all came under scrutiny during those years, following controversial use of force incidents with black community members. It is widely believed that these events contributed to that 2015 decline in confidence in police. According to Gallup, and I quote, "In the future, actions on the part of city governments and police departments to enhance relations with their communities, along with changes in policing techniques, could result in fewer racially charged incidents with police. That, in turn, could help restore some of the public's confidence in the police. However, it will likely take much more than that for the police to gain community trust." So often the term legitimacy is used when we talk about the police. But how does that fit into our discussion today? Simply put, legitimacy is a measure. It's a measure of the extent to which the public trust and have confidence in their police. When the police are viewed as legitimate, people are more willing to defer to the law and to police authority and believe their police actions are morally justified and appropriate. Therefore, policing leaders across the nation have been examining procedural justice concepts to better understand how to increase the public's trust and confidence. So I think before we proceed any further, I think it's important that we define what procedural justice is. You have to have an understanding. So as we've discussed, the goal for police is to increase the public's belief in their legitimacy by providing procedural justice. Now, when I think of procedural justice, the image that comes to my mind is Lady Justice, Lady Justica. You remember, she holds the scales in her hand, she's blindfolded, and those things really kind of conjure this image for me. So as I read these definitions and these tenets of procedural justice, I kind of want you to go back and visualize that if you can with me. So, the four basic tenets. First, whenever possible, police should provide members of the public an opportunity to explain their situation or tell their side of the story in any given situation. Second, people also feel they are receiving procedural justice if an officer makes decisions in a neutral and fair way, not based on the officer's personal opinions or biases. Third, people wish to be treated with dignity and politeness. Fourth, officers' decisions should reflect that the officer is trustworthy, caring, and always trying to do what's best for the community. So I think it goes without saying that the police, their success depends on the public viewing them as legitimate. Police operations in large part depend on the public's willingness to cooperate with them. Therefore, forward-thinking police leaders understand the value of increasing community trust and that sense of legitimacy. The goal of procedural justice model, like the restorative model, is to articulate a different approach to managing issues of social order and social control. Both models argue that most people have social values and social bonds that motivate them to follow most of the rules most of the time. This self-regulating motivational force allows the police to focus on managing the small subsets of people that don't share our values. Police leaders increasingly are seeing legitimacy as a necessary condition of success, as well as a worthy goal in its own right. And this isn't just my feelings. There's research out there that supports this. There's a growing body of research indicating that when the public believes the police exercise their authority in a procedurally just way, they accept the legitimacy of the police. They defer to police authority and are more willing to take responsibility of their own for obeying the law. So, before we can really, have my officers do this in the community, I feel as a leader I have to model that within my own organization. Just as it is important for a police department to treat community members with respect and dignity in order to ensure the public trust and have confidence in their police, it's important for me as a leader to install that sense of legitimacy within my own organization using procedural justice. Police officers, like community members, respond well to being treated fairly and with respect. Police leaders must model procedural justice within their organizations if they expect their officers to model it within our communities. Legitimacy and procedural justice, in my opinion, they're not mere programs. Legitimacy is not a public relations program or an initiative or a set of policies. Legitimacy is a measure by which every police department is judged every day. Legitimacy is a concept that police executives should integrate into their thinking about everything that a police department does. The police must strive to ensure that all police policies and practices have support in the community and do not undermine the public's views about the police and whether they perform in a legitimate and procedurally just way. This isn't a zero-sum game either. In countless daily encounters with members of the public, police can build legitimacy, sometimes without changing what we do in our basic approach to managing issues of crime and control and law enforcement. For example, we recently held a DUI checkpoint in our community, and that could go two ways depending on how we approach that. We know that it's an inconvenience when we stop motorists and check them and talk to them about what's going on. But depending on how that off, by saying something like, "Thank you for your cooperation," the stops may actually improve a motorist's opinion as opposed to maybe a different outcome. So, for instance, maybe an officer stops somebody on their side of the road and issues them a ticket, or maybe a warning. Those could have two very different outcomes. Even if you get a ticket, if the officer uses that procedural justice model, then the outcome might be different than if a rude officer gives somebody a warning, right? So that can really have an impact on the way we look at things in the community. And that's something that we talk about as police officers. Increasing legitimacy is now an element of police leadership and policing. It's something that I think you're going to hear more police officers and more police leaders talking about. For the reasons cited above, a police executive's ability to advance the concepts of legitimacy and procedural justice is increasingly seen as an essential element of leadership and policing. Kind of ends the formal portion of my presentation, and I know that some of this may be new concepts to you. So what I did is I brought with me a video that it's a short video, I think it's 3 or 4 minutes, and it kind of brings all these concepts into a visual, real life example. So with that, I'd like to have you watch this video, and then afterwards I'm happy to answer any questions about any of the procedural justice concepts today or what we're doing in our police department.
You know, I knew I was gonna get pulled over.
What do you mean?
I mean, I've been working all day. I'm just trying to get to the store, go home. But I'm a black man. I'm wearing a hoodie. And I knew I was screwed.
I didn't know you were black when I stopped you. I was right across the intersection from you, and you rolled through the stop sign.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do, but I feel like I'm the one who gets stopped all the time.
I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't know why you may have been stopped before, but I can only tell you why I stopped you tonight. It's because you ran the stop sign, nothing else.
Do you understand how scared I am when I get pulled over?
Tell me why you're scared.
Cops get nervous when they pull over a black guy. And I don't know how this is gonna end. I just don't want to get shot.
Okay, I get it. Been a lot of things causing mistrust, but I never know what's gonna happen either when I make a traffic stop. I want you to be able to trust the police, to trust me. I don't want you to be scared.
You're the first cop I've talked to that understands there's problems. And I think that maybe if I could talk to other cops like this, I don't know, I'd be less afraid.
If we could all talk like this, maybe everyone would be less afraid.
Will you remember this conversation when you come to my car? It matters. More than you know.
What's up, buddy? Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So your video suggested that more dialogue within the community about perception and judgment and fears may be an opportunity for creating a new procedural justice. So what opportunities are there for community members for those kinds of forums? It's not we're going to go to coffee every day, but do you have small groups or working groups within the city of Paso Robles where we can have those types of dialogues, or if people do have concerns, they can make an appointment?
You bet. So for us at the police department, I am a new police chief, as was kind of announced when I came in. And a lot of these concepts are things that I plan on bringing to the community and the organization. And that's why I felt it was important to come here today, because it opens those doors, it opens those conversations for us to be able to start talking about these kind of things within the community. So I think it starts with events like this today. One of my main goals that we're working through right now, my commanders and my police department, is we're trying to put together a strategic plan. And the strategic plan is important for me as a leader because it communicates to the direction that we want to go. And at the top of my list, and I get to put things at the top of the list because I'm the chief, is creating trust within the community. And so it's, for me, that's one of the big things. And I often relate it to this. So when you have, if I go to you, Mary, and say, hey, I need a plumber, and you tell me, I have the best plumber in the world, I've used this guy for 20 years, you trust him, I'm going to take that and I'm going to run with it. It's the same thing within the community. If I go to someone and they say, hey, I need a police officer, I need someone that I can talk to. You can go to Ty. He's a good police chief. He's honest. He's trustworthy. I can go to his commanders, and I know they're going to listen to us, and they're going to take it on face value, and they're going to work with us to come up with a solution. So I believe that we trust those people that we know. So my goal is to get out into the community, have people know me, create those opportunities to create dialogue and conversation. And I'm hoping that through some, strategic initiatives within the police department, these kind of conversations and teaching my folks within the organization, that'll be modeled all the way down from top to bottom within the organization. So you will see, more initiatives from the police department to create those kind of opportunities.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
We haven't seen this in the media. What we've seen is people screaming out, I can't breathe, or young teenagers being shot with a toy gun in their hand. So it's scary. I can understand why people are scared.
It is scary. It's policing has never been more difficult. I've been a police officer now for, 23 years. And for me, it's changed a lot from when I walked in the door in the mid-90s to where it is now. Like any organization, like anything you can think of, change is a necessity if we're going to improve the way we do. We can't do things the way we've always done them. I think that policing is very unique to every community. And I feel particularly lucky to have the job that I do in the community that we do. I think that my struggle or my challenges to increasing legitimacy within the community is probably not the same that maybe they have in Baltimore or in Ferguson, Missouri, or some of those places. And so, my commitment to this community is to, try and, if I have everybody's community support here and your police officers are trustworthy and mean well, then hopefully when that time comes, because it is a part of what we do here in the community, is sometimes we do have to use force. There are that 5% of the community that don't want to obey the rules, that might be violent or might do those things. But if you know that we make the right decisions, that our guiding principles are the right ones, and my expectations as a leader, then I'm hoping that trust will carry through and that you'll know that we'll do the right things. Yes, sir.
Among the many names that we have heard for police departments over the years is police force. And perhaps that came from the reality that the officers are armed, they have SWAT teams, and that there is always that threat of force that people, particularly of minority groups, feel. Is this what you're now doing? Can that be looked upon as replacing some of that stress on force with other human values?
I think that the term police force might be a carryover from a different era. I think most of the time you see us in these days, we're known as the police department. And our officers are, live here in this community. They raise their children here. They go to our schools, their neighbors, their friends. And that's, if you go back to the father of modern era policing, when you look at Sir Robert Peel is his name, some of his tenets I think are very applicable today. The police should be viewed, they are members of the community that serve a special role. And when we hire folks here, my commander and I were just talking about that driving over, is that we really try and identify and recruit folks that have a connection to our community. People that have gone to school here, that own houses here, that people know. Because when you have that connectiveness, I think it really changes the image of who our police departments are. Again, we're a unique community. We're a small community that has that small town feel, even though we're growing. And, having folks that were raised here and have that connection, I think help overcome some of those, previous notions about police departments and who work there. Do you have a question? No. Oh, okay.
Chief, is there anything from last night's forum that you can share with us today that would help us?
Sure. So he was referring last night, we had Paso Talks conversations at the Emergency Operations Center. The fire chief and I both gave presentations to some of our prospective council members, current council members, and the community, anybody that was interested. A little bit of overview on what the police department's doing and some of our goals and some of our challenges. And so I know I don't have the 30 minutes to go through that again, but I can give you some of the highlights. So for us, I can tell you that overall, crime is in pretty good shape here in Paso Robles. As far as violent crime goes, we're about 75% lower than the rest of the state when it comes to violent crime. Property crime, on the other hand, is something that we need to work on. We're about 12% above the state's average in property crime, meaning we have a lot of theft within the community. We're a destination location. We have a lot of visitors. And our police department does a lot of reactive policing right now. And what that means is that we're not able to engage in as much crime prevention as we would like. We're more reactive. That means when you call the police department, we respond, help solve a crime as opposed to help preventing it. The way I'm proposing that we overcome that is we have to increase our staffing. We're severely understaffed in the city of Paso Robles, and our police department needs to grow. We adhere to what we call the 60-40 rule. The International Association of Chiefs of Police plus the City Managers Association both encourages police departments to be a 60-40 split. 60% dedicated to answering community calls for service, and 40% doing those crime prevention measures that prevent crime from happening as opposed to dealing with them afterwards. That's where we want to be. Police departments were designed to prevent crime, and that's where I'm hoping that we can bring. So our department probably needs to grow significantly to be able to accomplish that. And anybody that would love to talk to me about that, I can go into the numbers and talk and show why we are where we are and what we need to do. But that's kind of the message that was from last night's forums.
I just wanted to ask whether we have any de-escalation training for our police officers here in Paso, and how do they feel about it?
Absolutely. De-escalation training, we regularly train. We have crisis intervention techniques. The role of police officers has expanded a lot during the years. One of the other things that I talked about last night was the police department's role in quality of life for its community. I apologize. And being able to, we talk about homelessness, we talk about mental health, we talk about drug addiction, we talk about, our role is changing, becoming more of counselors to some degree. And so our police officers, California is probably one of the leaders throughout the nation when it comes to training police departments. This video was produced by the Peace Officer Standards and Training, which is the regulatory body for police departments. And they really emphasize being able to use de-escalation techniques. We don't want to use force. And, we have very low instances of it here in Paso Robles. And I think that speaks to the training, the preparation, and the quality of the folks that we hire. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have yet another past district governor here in the audience, Loretta Butts. And she has some recognitions that we would like to do at this point in the program. So Loretta is an Atascadero resident. Please come up forward. And as I said, a former. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Well, you heard Wade Nomura this morning, another past district governor. We just, somebody once said that Rotary presidents die and district governors just accumulate. So we're going to have, you've got a couple of past district governors. You're going to have a district governor today. But I think what that should tell you is the support that this club has by Rotary. And to kind of key off of what Wade said, you heard about some of the projects that we're involved in, but although Rotary International is known for its general philanthropic initiatives, less is known about the group's contribution to international peace. As World War I was coming to an end, Paul Harris, the founder of Rotary, with the first Rotary Club in Chicago in 1905, uttered the following words. Now remember, this is at the end of World War I. The road to war is well paved. The road to peace is a wilderness. These insightful words mark one of the first testimonials of Rotarians' concern and interest in the issue of peace. So today, we would like to recognize the Rotary Club of Paso Robles Sunrise would like to recognize two individuals in your community. And if Hart, could you come up here, please? Yes, you. Yeah. I want to talk just a moment about Hart and Dick. The origins of the Paso Peace Community began in approximately 2015. So what's that, 110 years after Rotary was formed? And was formed by a World War II U.S. bomber pilot, Richard Blomquist. Now, as we said earlier, Richard is 101 years old. And Hartmut, who at age 5 survived the Allied bombing of Dresden at the end of World War II. Serendipitously, I got that word out, Dick and Hart's lives converged at the time of Dick's wife's death. They became fast friends and met every week. The larger circle of the Paso Peace Community meets once a month to pursue inner peace and then to promote peace resolutely in the wider community. Out of their shared and individual experiences, they have fostered a movement in the community emphasizing the possibility of peace, or as we say, peace is possible. Rotarians often designate a Paul Harris Fellow as a tribute to a person whose life demonstrates a shared purpose with the objectives of the Rotary Foundation. It gives me great pleasure to present to Dick and to Hart the emblems of appreciation for a Paul Harris Fellow, certificate and pin. So Nancy, if you would present those, please. Please accept our congratulations and sincere thanks for your commitment to our common goals and world understanding and peace. And if I could just ask you, could you stand, please, and give these gentlemen recognition?
Create community and bring people from diverse backgrounds together. And today she's going to be talking to us about peace and the power of belonging. So please welcome Dory Stone.
Good morning, everyone. Mother Teresa said, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to one another. If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to one another." It's easy to nod and agree and say, that sounds about right. Mother Teresa said it after all. But what does that statement really mean? What is belonging to one another? What does that actually look like? And is that the reason we don't have peace in the world today? And if so, what can we do about it? Let's explore each of those questions. First of all, what does it mean to belong to one another? When I think about belonging, what comes to mind is the word my. There are some people who I refer to as my friend, my sister, my housemate. I think of those people as being part of the same circle that I'm in. And they're the people who I generally feel some sense of responsibility to, and the people to whom I'm most likely to turn when things get hard. If my sister lost her apartment, or my brother was in jail, or my mom got deported from the country, or a friend was kidnapped by sex traffickers, I would jump into action. I'd do everything that I could to help them. And I've often asked myself, how can I be so complacent when other people are enduring those things right now? People who are probably just as special as the ones who I consider my people. You're probably thinking, well, Dory, maybe because there's a limited amount of time and energy in one human life? And you're right. It would be impossible to broaden our circle of belonging, our circle of active belonging to that extent, to include everyone all the time. We'd all go crazy. But is there something between that extreme and where we stand right now? Is it possible that if we each widened our circle of belonging a little bit, that the cumulative and overlapping effect of all of that could wind up encompassing the whole world? So often we're afraid that we can't do something perfectly or completely, so then we don't try doing it at all, and great opportunities are missed. Let's entertain the idea for a moment then. What would it mean to feel the sense of mutual belonging that you may feel with your siblings or your kids, your friends, or members of your congregation? What would it be like to really feel that way with somebody outside of your ordinary sphere? Say someone who's in prison right now, or an undocumented day laborer who doesn't speak English, or the woman who's sitting on the corner reeking of body odor with her belongings piled all around her. How about someone addicted to heroin, or a teenager who's been expelled from school for delinquent behavior? Imagine if you saw a newspaper headline about that person, and instead of being an anonymous stranger, you thought, oh my gosh, that's my friend so-and-so. Oh, that's my pen pal. That's my lunch buddy. And the key word there is that you're saying my, and that person would be using that word to talk about you too. It's an indication that we belong to one another. That brings us to the second question. Is a lack of such connections the reason that we don't have peace in the world? Is there really a peace-building benefit to including people who are so different from us and who we may see as damaged or difficult in our own circles of acquaintance and belonging? It sounds like that might be a recipe for disaster, not peace. And just as a quick side note, if you're still learning how to set boundaries and take good care of yourself, it can be disastrous. I'm working on that still. But I can also think of a few reasons that Mother Teresa might be right. First of all, in the wake of so many mass shootings in recent history, we're probably all aware that the people who inflict such carnage tend to be people who felt alienated, who lacked a sense of social connection and belonging. And we also know that people are more likely to join gangs or terrorist organizations if they don't have a sense of being valued, a sense of inclusion and security in their lives. There's this great organization called Musicians Without Borders that I had the pleasure to train with last year. And they have found that kids who participate in their music workshops are less likely to bully or even hold prejudices against other kids who are in the workshop. Because after they've played music together, they now feel like we're part of the same group. This isn't actually a new discovery. Among the Navajo, or more accurately the Diné people, there's a concept that a criminal is someone who acts as though he has no family. Imagine that. A criminal is someone who acts as though he has no family. So the Diné people recognized that there are certain ways, certain kinds of behavior that we're unlikely to engage in when we're embedded in a familial web of belonging. One of my greatest sources of inspiration right now is Father Greg Boyle, the founder of Homeboy Industries down in LA. It's the largest gang intervention and reentry program in the world, in which former gang members are working side by side with their past rival gang members, and they're working together in various enterprises like a bakery and a silkscreen business. So at Homeboy Industries, we see this phenomenon happening in reverse. People abandoning lifestyles of violence once they become part of a community that values their membership and sees the good in them. Greg Boyle believes that when people, especially those in power, get to actually see a thriving community like that, a place where the outcast is appreciated and is making a valuable contribution, he believes that only then will our society start to make real changes toward peace and justice. And one final point in favor of Mother Teresa's claim. One could argue that a sense of belonging doesn't only bring about peace because of how it transforms others, the outcast or the potentially violent, but because of how it transforms all of us. Last spring, I had the privilege of working in a garden for a full day with a young man who had recently been released from SLO County Jail, where he was serving time for public drunkenness. This guy was something of a vagabond. He had been hitchhiking and hopping trains all over the country and working various jobs for a while before hitting the road again. And he had a certain toughness to him. He wasn't somebody who I would generally feel a great affinity with. We started off that morning as two awkward strangers. By the time we left in the afternoon, we were giving each other a giant bear hug, and he was telling me it was the best day he had had in a long time. And I sincerely felt that way too. In the course of our conversation while working together, I had come to feel so much awe and appreciation for this person. He had such a sensitive heart and a philosophical mind, and he was so resilient in the face of these immense hardships he'd been dealing with since childhood. I was really moved by his passion for helping other people and his humbleness to admit his own weaknesses and his earnest quest to find a meaningful place for himself in the world. In spite of our drastically different life circumstances, I could now see so much of myself in him, and vice versa. While every encounter with a stranger isn't necessarily as powerful as that one, I have found over and over again that when I actually get to know someone and enter into a relationship with them, I'm so moved by the burdens that they've had to carry that I don't have much room left for judgment about how they've carried them. Greg Boyle maintains that if we stand by the belligerent or the badly behaved, eventually we'll come to see bad behavior for what it really is, the language of the deeply wounded, of those whose burdens are more than they can bear. I believe that that awareness is the ground from which our compassion can grow. I mean, the truth is, we're all carrying our wounds in some way from the violence and the imbalance in this world. We all have some healing to do. And to connect and experience a feeling of friendship with someone who you might previously have been afraid of or felt really alienated from can be extremely healing. Is it possible that when Mother Teresa said, "If we have no peace," perhaps she was also talking about inner peace? Now we've talked about what it could mean to belong to one another and how that could help bring about peace. But how does one actually do it? Can you just walk out the door one morning and say, I'm going to go become good friends now with a complete stranger who I have little in common with and don't know what to say to. I mean, sometimes it just feels like we're from different planets. And when that feeling's mutual, how can you arrive at a sense of closeness or even a basic camaraderie with someone? This is actually an especially challenging question for someone like me who's an introvert and sometimes finds it difficult to make conversation with anybody. So how can we fill Mother Teresa's prescription? How can we overcome what Buddhists call the illusion of separateness when that gulf between us can just feel so wide? A good first step I have found is just to inhabit the same places as other people. Greg Boyle says it's not so much about reaching out to people as whether you can be reached by them. The best example I've personally experienced of this is taking the bus. I don't have a car, and I get around by bicycle and public transit. And riding on the bus has caused me to interact with so many people who I probably wouldn't have otherwise encountered. We're there, sitting next to each other, rolling down the road. And I have made some lasting and unlikely friendships on the bus. I've had really eye-opening conversations and gotten windows into the lives of people who I wouldn't typically know. Another place like that is the laundromat. By doing laundry at the laundromat, instead of having a washing machine at home, I wind up bumping shoulders with the lower income members of my neighborhood, and often with people who don't speak English, or people who have lost their housing and sit in the laundromat in the winter to stay warm. By just inhabiting the same places as other people, even without an effort to forge connections, connection is often born. Of course, another way is by volunteering. You could tutor at-risk teens, serve at a soup kitchen, or answer the phone for a crisis hotline. Greg Boyle, I know I'm quoting him a lot, but he's my great inspiration and teacher at the moment. Greg Boyle says that serving others is a good start, but it's actually just the hallway that leads to the grand ballroom. Because when you're in service, there's this separation between service provider and service recipient. But the grand ballroom, he says, is this place of exquisite mutuality, where we're just two people together, and all the other distinctions and barriers fade into the background. So how does that happen? How can the hallway of service lead to this grand ballroom of exquisite mutuality? In my experience, you can't really make it happen. You can just make space for it to happen, and sometimes it will. Here's a story. Last year, I was going to go serve at a Thanksgiving dinner for the homeless in San Luis. I didn't have my bike that day, so I was walking to the place. Because I'm walking down the sidewalk, I meet this other guy who's walking down the sidewalk. He's limping with an injured leg. We exchange a few words and realize we're both going to the same place. He strikes me as someone who people tend to keep their distance from. He's really disheveled, smelling strongly of body odor and of a putrid, severe skin infection. He's missing a lot of teeth, so when he talks, little flecks of saliva fly in my face. He has a gruff demeanor and just a very unsugar-coated way of speaking. So I'm polite to him, and when we get to the place, we go our separate ways. He goes to the dining area, I go to the serving area. Later that evening, I spot a piano in the corner, and it turns out I've been practicing really hard for an upcoming recital where I'm going to be playing Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite. So I take this opportunity to go over and practice the piano. Well, that guy from earlier on the sidewalk limps over, and the whole time I'm playing, he just stands there transfixed with this huge grin on his face. When I finish, he's eager to talk with me, and he tells me why he loved that music so much. It turns out that his mom was a concert pianist, and she used to play Tchaikovsky all the time. So when he hears Tchaikovsky's music, it takes him back to being a little boy and hearing his mom play the piano. He tears up telling me this, and I know what he's talking about, because that is how I feel when I hear Beethoven's Für Elise, because my mom always used to play that when I was little. I tear up too. And then we get into this whole conversation about how much we love classical music and our moms. We're in the grand ballroom. For me, that sense of kinship sometimes arises in moments when laughter overtakes me and another person, particularly over some all too familiar human issue like trying to not pass gas in public. Or if I go through an ordeal with someone, like we're locked in an elevator together or we're trying to catch a dog that's running into the street. Or just when I see someone cry and I recognize their deepest fears and hopes and dreams as the same as mine. I recently helped to do interviews for a documentary film about local people without housing. Instead of asking questions only about homelessness, how do you lose your house? What's the hardest thing about being out here? Do you have a plan to move forward? We also asked questions like, are you a cat person or a dog person? What makes you laugh? Do you have a secret talent or skill? What's the most meaningful thing you've done in your life? We asked people those questions in the hope that they might be doorways to the grand ballroom, and they often were. So say you're feeling inspired right now. You want to go give this a try. The question still remains, how? Where? What can you do today or this week to start building this sense of mutual belonging with members of our community who are often excluded, judged, or alone? One way you could start is by asking yourself, what's a group that you feel some judgment about? Maybe a particular religion or the opposite end of the political spectrum. Maybe people who have vandalized a public building or parents who have had their kids taken away from them. Who do you have some judgment about? And then ask yourself, how much time have you spent with someone from that group? How many conversations have you had? Is there some place or some way that you could give that a try and see what happens? I lead a local organization called Common Ground Worldwide, and one of our main goals is to help facilitate those sorts of connections, to help make it easier for all of us to do this, to create places where it can naturally happen. Common Ground Worldwide also runs the community garden here in Paso up at Centennial Park, which is where that story I told earlier took place. I have personally found that gardening and farming are where I tend to really feel a sense of kinship with people. I've been an intern and a worker on various farms, and the best conversations I've had have been while weeding a row of crops or harvesting tomatoes with someone. Like I told you before, I'm really an introvert. And there's something about working together side by side with the plants and the soil that just makes all that social anxiety evaporate. I just love sharing with people the miracle of seeds germinating. You too? Great, we should garden together. It's beautiful, the colors, the aromas. There's something that can be so unifying about that simple act of growing food and harvesting and eating it together, and also uplifting. So as I said, Common Ground Worldwide runs the educational garden at Centennial Park off of Creston Road, and there are a lot of opportunities there for more people to get involved. But we also have a bigger vision. That vision is to create a therapeutic farm and community center where people from all walks of life can come have experiences like this. A place like Homeboy Industries in LA that provides employment and training, but also more than just employment, belonging. So picture this. We're on a spacious property here in northern SLO County, or possibly just over the Monterey County line. And over there you can see a fruit orchard and all these rows of vegetable crops. And you can see some people over there. They're working together harvesting carrots for the farm stand up there by the road, and also for some orders that we got from local restaurants. And then just up that way at the picnic table, those people sitting over there are making flower arrangements and hand-woven baskets for our gift shop. Up there in the gazebo in the garden, you might see some people sitting in a circle. We won't disturb them right now because they're having a restorative justice circle. One of the main things that we do here is learn and practice new ways of communicating with each other and working through conflict. And today, one of our skilled volunteers is here, and she's helping facilitate restorative circles. If you take this path down this way, you'll come to our community center. That's where we have shared meals and group events. And we're actually having a theater performance there tonight. You're all welcome to come. Uh-oh. I think that's meant for me. I'm almost there. And then if you continue on beyond the community center, there's an area just down that way we call the village. And that's where some of our community members live here on site in these really beautiful little straw bale cottages that we can rent super affordably because they're mostly built from reclaimed materials, and our great volunteer team came together and put up these cottages. So this tour could go on for a while, but that's an introduction. I know that we can do this here in Paso. We can take the ideas about peace building from this conference today and put them into real action here in our community. Let's make this conference bear some fruit. Let's take all the talk and the learning and the inspiration that we walk away with today and do something with it so that we can look back on this first annual peace conference as the beginning of something new that was born in Paso Robles. The day that peace really did start to become a little bit more possible. Would you like to be part of that? All right, if so, I'm glad. If so, get out a paper and a pen right now and write this down. All lowercase, all one word. Common Ground Worldwide at live.com, or maybe it's live.com, I don't know. Common Ground Worldwide at live.com. That's our email address, and we would love to hear from you. We're looking for more volunteers right now, as well as advisors, donors. Also, we have a couple of spots on our board of directors for additional board members. So there are many ways, large and small, that you could be part of this. I'd also like to invite you to come visit me out in the lobby at lunchtime or after the conference. And I'll be out there with copies of my book, Growing Home, which explores a lot of the themes that I've been talking about today. Those are available by donation, and all donations will go 100% to supporting Common Ground Worldwide. I'll also have pamphlets and flyers and a sign-up sheet for anyone who would like to get involved or stay in touch. So I'd like to end now with one last quote by Greg Boyle that echoes the words of Mother Teresa. No matter how focused we may be on our worthy goals of peace, justice, and equality, they actually can't happen without an undergirding sense that we belong to one another. Seek first the kinship, then see what happens. Seek first the kinship, and then see what happens. Will it lead to greater peace in the world? Or here in our community? I think there's only one way to find out. So at this critical time right now on the earth and in our lives, I invite you to join me and give it a try. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dory. I actually read one of Dory's books, and I must confess to having a tear in the eye a couple times on that book. It was really nicely done, and we're very appreciative of the work that she's doing, and we actually support that vision that she has. So we have a short video to show you right now, and we'll do that. And now to tell us a bit about what Sunrise Rotary activities are is Lindy Althouse. Very pleased to be able to introduce her to tell you some of the things we're actually doing in the community and the actions that we're taking. Lindy.
I am so happy to have such a diverse group of people attending this conference that represent so many different parts of our communities, plural. And as part of what Rotary International does and the Rotary Club of Paso Robles Sunrise, we work at all scales, from the community, the personal, to the county, intercounty, and international levels. Our Rotary Club of Paso Robles Sunrise has done so many things that when I told Manny how many words I was going to put up on the screen, he groaned. I said, okay, I won't put the words up on the screen. I'm just going to rattle a whole bunch of things off. And I do this in part just to give you a little bit of what a tiny little club with 20-some people can do over the years, one project at a time. We have provided a boat for children to get to a school in a community in South America. We helped to drive a fire truck into Mexico so they would have some fire protection. We set up a bakery and sewing equipment for women in Central America. We did water wells in Africa. We set up a peanut factory in Africa. Why a peanut factory? Peanuts are really good protein, and the people built it themselves. We didn't build it for them. We built a park in Guatemala, thanks to Nancy Fisk, and we didn't do it ourselves. We did it with a number of other people and groups in Guatemala. We've had polio drives. We've sent people to different countries to immunize around the world. Craig Armstrong, one of our Rotarians, the son-in-law of Dick Bloomquist, did a cleft palate clinic on a medical trip with another one of our Rotarians, with another bigger group. Now, Craig is an engineer. But, you know, we use our vocational service however we can. And whether we're an engineer and we're helping out to support an activity, or we're the doctors or the nurses themselves, we're there. We've done wheelchair drives. We have for really cool wheelchairs for people who've never been able to get about. We've supplied library books for children in Bali, where another one of our Rotarians moved and said, these kids need library books. We sent housing for people after the Katrina hurricane. We did tree planting right here in California this last year after our devastating fires. We've supported our community foundation. We support our seniors with a barbecue every year. And we have done smoke detectors for seniors in the Quail Run residential development with our fire department. And you know, I got to thinking, there's a lot of things we could do with our police department. Got kind of excited about that today. We've donated money to get the Centennial Pool built so that kids who need to learn to swim, don't you think every kid should learn to swim if they want to? Gets a place to swim. We helped to fix up the downtown play area, and more recently, Maria was telling us about the shade that was needed at the upper end of town, so we helped support that as well. We sent bedding over to women that were re-entering the workforce, and we've sent homeless day packs and personal essentials out into the field, into the Salinas River for those people who are living and working there. We've dug trenches for a water fountain in the Centennial Park in Paso Robles. We helped fix the ball field dugouts. Did you know this little club was so busy? You know, when I was talking on KCBX a couple of weeks ago, Fred Monroe said to me, he said, Lindy, I thought Rotarians were a bunch of stodgy men talking about derivatives and interest rates. I said, oh no, look at me. I'm a Rotarian at work. We've sent a number of kids with scholarships on to school in colleges and for technical programs. We've also worked with our middle school kids on a 4-way essay contest. Rotarians believe that some of the primary elements of your behavior involve, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? We've supported Rotary Youth Leadership Awards for a diverse group of students who go down to Ojai to get training on leadership, kids that are put together just like you and me today. I don't know a lot of you. I love getting to know a lot of you. They don't either. And those kids, like these 5 that are up here, that I'm so proud to have you guys here from Paso Robles High School. they come into this organization and they said, we're invited to this peace conference, but do we really fit in? There's a bunch of people that are a whole lot older than me. And you guys, we are so excited that Paso Robles High School brought you here or allowed you to come here, because we have work to do. And what Common Ground Worldwide is doing here in Paso, we want to work on with our civic leaders. That's our next big project here in Paso Robles, and serving our underserved. And with that, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindy. Yeah, lots going on. Our next speaker is Bianca Neff, who has been active in humanitarian work for over 20 years. She's worked in Latin America, Central Asia, and North Africa, and earned her master's degree as a Rotary Peace Fellow at the University of Bradford, Yorkshire, England. She serves as founding director of Petra Peace Builders, which she'll tell us a bit about today, and has lived in a lot of countries. I think 7 is my count, and currently runs the organization from Malaga, Spain. So we're very pleased that Bianca could make it here today, and please welcome Bianca Neff.
Thank you, Dan, and good to be with everybody this morning. My name is Bianca. How many Rotarians in the room? Okay. And I know that all the Rotarians have heard about the Rotary Peace Fellowship, but maybe the others haven't. I'm not going to go into that today because there's just not enough time and there's too much good stuff that I want to talk about. But I do want to say to the Rotarians in the room, Petra Peace Builders is the fruit of my own experiences in the field, but it would not have happened had it not been for my Rotary Peace Fellowship, because it really catapulted me professionally, and my Rotary Peace Fellowship would not have happened without your generous contributions to the Rotary Foundation, out of which foundation this Rotary Peace Fellowship is a major initiative. So thank you to the Rotarians in the room, and for all of the rest of you that are not Rotarians, please know that your local Rotary clubs are part of a worldwide movement that puts serious professionals in serious places to do really interesting work around the world. I'm really glad to see the high school students here today, because I don't know what you've heard about Rotary before, but Rotary's got it going on. So find the right people to connect with. They will open doors for you. They will help you take the steps that you want to take in your career, college, education, career, further on. Mentors right on your doorstep. Take advantage of them. It's a good community to be a part of. So my name is Bianca. I'm half American. I'm half Spanish from the Basque region in northern Spain. That whole history of conflict is a big part of my own family and how I grew up. So I have wrestled with identity issues, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. First thing that we're going to do is just run a quick 3-minute video to give you a picture of the work that we do. I'm actually not going to talk too much about the work we do, but I am going to tie it into how hopefully it affects you guys here, right here in Paso Robles. The heart of peace building is all the same, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's see the video.
There was in a specific moment I really remember that they told us that there was like 700 paramilitary people coming towards the peace community we were accompanying, and I was really scared, like really scared. Then I guess I asked myself, it's like, am I ready to die?
We had received word the night before that several families had been killed, likely. So we had to go assess the situation. And when we arrived, we met with a very, very grisly scene. I had 4 colleagues who, upon return to their home countries, ended up serving a minimum of 6 months, up to 2 years in mental institutions from the trauma that experience caused, and trying to negotiate that experience back into their daily lives.
The same attributes that make them so effective in their work, attributes like empathy, compassion, sensitivity, willingness to risk one's own well-being. These are actually the same attributes that make people most susceptible to the occupational illnesses that we see in this field. How can we foster forgiveness, love, compassion, so that the people doing peace-building work are giving the very best of themselves? And it's important because people are watching. People in society are watching to see whether peace is something that they can believe in. And that's the difference that peace builders make. And that's why resilience for them in particular is so very important.
I've been usually working with activists, local activists, and they all suffer from the same, which is burnout, which is depression, which is that pressure. And they always talk about how useful it would be to have all those tools, you know, that no one has taught them, you know.
Think about when a bone in the body is broken. Doctors say that the place where the bone is broken actually heals back and it becomes stronger than before. And that's really important to understand when we're looking at a broken peace builder or somebody who's going through a really hard time. If those people can get the care that they need, if we can mend that bone in the right way, in the right place at the right time, then there's no reason why that bone can't grow stronger than ever before. The problem is, again, when you don't get the care that you need. But if you do, it's actually a really great opportunity.
And that's why I like the Petra's mission, you know. It's something that is needed, and it's a real need. It's nothing that has been made up or created, you know, something that the world somehow is waiting for.
So that's a little picture of my world and the kind of people that I help. You know, I've got a program that I present, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to talk from the heart a little bit, share a few stories, and I hope that it connects with each of you on some level. So I'm going to go a little bit more into the story of the guy, Oscar, who was sharing that story. He's a friend of mine. He's a Spaniard. He and his wife, who's actually Erica in the video, they were working together as a husband and wife team in Colombia, in the FARC-controlled rebel territories, as accompanists to nonviolent communities of peace, and just some of the most amazing work that you can do. Unfortunately, the fact is that when there's no international presence, the risk of violence goes up. But if international folks come in and serve as accompanists and as a presence, the likelihood of violence goes down. Not all the time, and so these folks and the communities that they work in obviously are susceptible to a lot of trauma, even secondary trauma. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the story behind Oscar that we didn't have time to fit in the video. But he talks about being there in a place in the jungle, talking about he got word that 700 paramilitaries were coming and he didn't know what was next. And so I want to sit with that a little bit, just for a few minutes, and get into the heart and the mind of this guy who finds himself in Colombia. And what was not said in the video is what I know, the rest of the story is his friend, is that when he asked himself the question, am I ready to die? The answer to that question was yes. So this was over a period of a weekend. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, these guys are going to be here in an hour, what do we do? No, it was they're 3 days away. Okay, now they're 2 days away. Now they're 1 day away. Now they're 12 hours away. So it's this progression of danger coming to you, and you're making very conscious choices about what you do. Right? And so that's the process that I want to talk about today. Is for Oscar to be able to come to a place where he says, yes, I'm okay with dying. The rest of the story is, am I ready to die? Yes, I am. And in his words, he says, okay, if I die serving these people, this is a life well lived. This is what I'm here to do, and I will have no regrets if my life is over as a result of what my worst fears are. As you know, apparently that did not happen. He got out safely, but he had to face death in the face, right? So as we think about Oscar and his process, I mean, what does it take for a person to get to that point to say, yes, this is the life that I want to live. This is the risk that I'm willing to take. And that's where resilience, I mean, the title of my little talk today is the role of resilience in peace building. Oscar's an incredibly resilient person. For him to have faced everything that he's faced and to not come home and just fall apart, but even if he had fallen apart, I know that he would have taken the time that he needed to heal and go back. So this is not to say that resilience means you never get broken or that you never suffer. No, the suffering is part of peace building. Whether it's here, maybe not violent physical suffering, but there's mental suffering in our work. There's emotional suffering in our work. There's social suffering in our work, you know? So the role of resilience, it's really interesting. I want to share another story about a guy in Afghanistan who I'm coaching right now. So I just wanted to say that other part about Oscar to just have us think, okay, we hear these little sound bites on the video, but what's the deeper part of that story? And who is this person that can face these things? There was a progress of months and years prior to that moment that he was able to make the decision that he did that we would call it a courageous one or a heroic one. But there's all this build-up to that time. So what are we doing in the build-up to our big moment, right? And that's like where I think this message applies to us today. What are we doing with our time? How are we being good stewards of our resources, of our time, of our relationships, of our free time, of our money? Man, it's not like there's any lack of good things in this community happening that you can put your money to. There's no lack of good things that you can spend your time doing. Turn Netflix off, man. Turn it off. Not all of it, but turn 20% of your TV off and go spend some time doing something. Anyway, I'm getting off track. I want to talk about my friend in Kabul. So I'm coaching this guy. He's running a peace building program. He's 28 years old. He's Afghan. And I find it fascinating because I'm a humanitarian coach. And in my career path, I was doing anthropology and then got into conflict resolution, ethnic conflict resolution. And then at the end of my Rotary Peace Fellowship, I kind of got to a crossroads where I realized, wow, there's so many needs in our field. I can either continue going down the road that I wanted, which is to do high-level mediations and for, big level conflicts. But I don't hear anybody talking about resilience. I don't hear people talking about mental health. I don't hear people talking about trauma. And I have colleagues who are suffering. So the short version is that I felt that my personal best contribution was to find a way to support grassroots efforts. I felt it was better for me to come underneath and support that than to join it just outright. So that's when I got into coaching. Which are the coaching that we do accompanies a lot of the trauma therapy that happens. So what happens when your insurance runs out and the 3 months of therapy that you got is not enough? That's where our coaching comes into play. Who's accompanying you in the long term to meet your personal goals, to meet your professional goals? And it's all about your resilience and what you're doing as a peace builder. So it's taking some of the best things in coaching from the business world, bringing that into peace building, taking some of the best things from the world of first responders and the medical community with debriefing, bringing that into peace building. So that's the kind of work that we do to give you a picture. So when I talk about the coaching this guy in Kabul, which we do over Skype, I sit at my desk in Spain and here's this, young guy and we have our interactions But what I want to share about with you about Tamim in Kabul is that I'm fascinated by the fact that he bears a lot of weight in this peace-building program in Kabul. This is a war-torn country, and if anybody has weight on his shoulders to lift up his community, I mean, it's this guy. So he got a young family. He's got 2 little kids at home. I don't know how much his family really is behind him and supporting him, even in his work, so he's suffering alienation there. But I think it's so interesting that of all the issues that he could bring to the table in a coaching conversation, we could do, executive coaching around the organizational goals and aims. We could talk about any number of things, but what he's most concerned about is his own personal integrity and growth. And that's what we're talking about in our coaching sessions. So we just finished our 4th session. At the end of the 4th session, we're talking about the progress made in the series goals that we set from the beginning. And he's telling me that his wife is noticing certain changes in him, and she's asking, like, what's happened to you? What's different? And so in 4 short sessions, he is seeing noticeable difference in his reactions to things, his emotional responses. And I'm like, man, this is the sweet spot of what I love doing in my work. Getting to the heart of what a guy in Kabul, like I've had this thing for Afghanistan for decades. I've never gone there. I've always wanted to. The door's always closed. As soon as I was getting ready to buy the ticket, whatever, time after time after time, opportunities closed. But this is my contribution to serving peace-building efforts there. And I'm just fascinated that after 4 sessions, this guy feels like Petra is making a difference in his life. And he looks up to me as an older sister. And in Afghanistan, there's a term on the end of a name. It's kind of like I don't know, maybe I'm butchering this, Wade, but in Japanese, like san, like Wade-san. In the Dari language, which is what they speak in Afghanistan, it's John. So he calls me Bianca John, which is a term of endearment and somewhat respect. And it's just really interesting how the people that I work with and that I see are crying out for people to walk alongside them and to have a safe space to share their deepest struggles. You know, and within the first 20 minutes of our first session, I felt like he was my brother. And who was it that was talking about just reaching out and connection and like, just reach out and see what happens? Like, that's what I do all the time with the people that we work with. And I'm always amazed that these other people trust me to come into their lives. They don't know me. I've got all these stereotypes against me as an American and this and that. They trust me. They think that I have something to offer, and hopefully they sense a spirit of humility that is there to serve. And through that, it's these amazing collaborations and partnerships. But coming back to the issue of integrity and personal growth, like this is a peace builder that is serious about who he's becoming, not just about what he's doing, right? And how often in our lives, in our work, in our community service, do we think about the concept or the idea that what we do is important, but not as important as who we are while we're doing it? I personally don't hear enough of that kind of talk in the podiums that I hear people speak from. And so I'm just throwing it out there today. You know, Gandhi famously said, be the change you wish to see in the world. How well are we doing that? When you go home today, like, do you think about that? Or you just think about the next project? Or how much do we think about mending the relationships even within our own Rotary clubs or within our schools or within our families? Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on ourselves, I think. And trust me when I say that I am speaking to myself first. I really am. But I can say with confidence that I trust myself enough to know, and I give myself enough grace and patience in the process. I know what I'm becoming to do. If I can't do it today, how can I take that one step further? Just one step. So I guess the message that I just want to leave with all of us today is that all these things, there's so many things that are required for peace building. I mean, you need technical expertise, you need resources, you need to get fundraisers out there, and those are all important. But without the integrity, I mean, integrity is that, yeah, it's that well, it's that source that's going to boost your resilience in all this, that when you hit lows, you're going to be able to come back up. Even when you're disappointed with yourself, that's okay. You're going to come back up because you've done that work. So all those other things are important. But to me, that resilience rooted in who you are as a person and becoming your best self, that's everything. That's all I've got, Mr. Dan.
Thank you very much, Bianca. All Our next speaker is Commander Paul Euler. And Paul is a Navy reservist. He's currently serving with Strike Fighter Squadron 122 at Naval Air Station Lemoore, where he's an instructor pilot. And Paul also works for the Department of Defense. He was born right here in Paso, well, not right here in Paso Robles, but in the Central Coast, and was raised here and is a graduate of Paso Robles High School. He attended the United States Naval Academy and graduated from that institution in 2002. And he began his career as a pilot at that time. And Paul is here today to share some of his experiences and about achieving and how achieving peace is personal. Paul, welcome.
On December 8th, 2007, a pair of the U.S. Navy's newest strike fighter aircraft operating over the Arabian Sea were redirected from a training mission to intercept and identify an unknown aircraft that appeared intent on overflying coalition warships in international waters. As the two Navy jets accelerated towards the interloper, tensions were high. Good morning, my name is Paul Euler. I'm a veteran and a Navy reservist. I served for 11 years on active duty, completing 3 combat deployments in support of operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Those tours took me to the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, the Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and to many ports of call across the world. Through my travels and many interactions with people from various backgrounds, I have come to the conclusion that peace is personal. Further, I believe that lasting, widespread peace is only to be achieved to the extent that we approach and receive others with respect, we communicate openly, and we listen closely in order to gain a deep understanding of the experiences and ethos that shape our lives. At a small fabric shop in Dubai, the shopkeeper was relentless. He pressed my friends and I, who were enjoying a welcome respite from the pace of life aboard an aircraft carrier, about our nationalities, demanding to know whether or not we were Americans. We replied in vague platitudes. The Navy's standing policy held it was best not to divulge our identities or professions while interacting with locals in Middle Eastern countries. On this particular day, however, in this particular fabric shop, I made a conscious decision to deviate from that guidance. It was broad daylight. The twisting corridors of the souk outside were thronging with people, many of them Westerners. I was accompanied by 4 friends. I felt safe enough to risk what might follow. I took a breath and told the shopkeeper I was an American. "Are you in the Army?" he demanded. I said, "No, I'm in the Navy." "Have you ever been to Afghanistan?" he continued. I took a deep breath. I told him I had. "Well, I am from Afghanistan," he said. I took a deep breath as he paused. That was our cue. My friends and I started moving toward the door. "And I would like to thank you and your friends for the work you are doing to protect my country," he said. I was stunned. In the minutes that followed, the shopkeeper shared deeply personal stories relating his experience and the experiences of his family members and his friends, some of whom had escaped and some of whom still remained. My friends and I listened enthralled as a man we thought would surely hate us laid bare the agony of fear, separation, and devastation that decades of unchecked oppression had wrought in the country he called home. When it was time for us to leave, he embraced us That interaction solidified in my mind a belief that first took root in me 5 years earlier on a training flight over the Arabian Sea. I was exhilarated as I banked my F-A-18 Super Hornet away from the HMS Manchester, a British warship operating as part of our carrier strike group, and accelerated toward the unknown aircraft some 20 miles away. I radioed my wingman to assume a covering position and peered through the thick haze. I didn't know what to expect. I knew I was responsible for escorting the aircraft in close formation as long as it remained in proximity to coalition or US warships. I also needed to bring back pictures for intelligence to analyze. They would want proof of the interaction and the nationality of the aircraft. So I pulled out my camera. We closed the distance quickly, unable to visually acquire our objective. We were less than 2 miles away when a vague white shape began to materialize in the brown, soupy sky. It was a maritime patrol aircraft, a large, lumbering, 4-engine airplane whose mission was to scour the sea for ships and submarines. The red, white, and green markings of the Iranian Air Force became clearly visible. The simmering animosity between the US and Iran was nothing new. What was new was the presence of our carrier strike group. We had only just sailed into the Northern Arabian Sea a few hours prior to my training mission. In the absence of open hostilities, any untoward action could be misconstrued. I needed to execute my intercept exactly in accordance with the procedures I had been taught, or I risked unintentionally escalating the conflict. I slowed to match the speed of the much larger aircraft, sliding slowly along its left side from the tail to the nose. Now I was close enough to clearly make out the face of the pilot in the left seat through the cockpit window. I raised my camera and snapped a few pictures. When I dropped the camera, I realized the Iranian pilot had a camera too. He was taking pictures of me. I guess his higher-ups have similar expectations to mine, I thought. He waved. Was it a wave? Or was he signaling me to get away from his airplane? He waved again. And this time he was smiling. Okay, that's unmistakable. He's smiling. I waved back. Behind my oxygen mask, a smile was beginning to form on my face too, though he couldn't see it. I realized I hadn't taken any photos from this exact vantage point. Maybe I'd get a photo of him waving. I raised the camera and snapped a couple more photos. Suddenly, a second shape appeared in the left window behind the Iranian pilot's seat. It was a head. Only this head was much, much smaller than the pilot's. I drifted a bit further from his plane while taking pictures, so I slid my aircraft closer. From behind the pilot's seat peered the face of a boy, no more than 12 years old. He was smiling broadly. He thrust his small hand into the window and waved, then gestured with his fingers in a V like a peace sign. I waved back and then showed my own V peace sign in response. The boy's face turned to face the pilot. The pilot in the front seat nodded and seemed to be laughing. It was clear that they were sharing an animated conversation, though I had no idea what they said. Watching them talk, it hit me. Today is Saturday. That could be the pilot's son. Were they out for a weekend joyride and just happened upon our strike group? Surely they weren't executing directed surveillance operations over our warships with a child aboard. I didn't have children yet, but I knew that if I did, I would want to take them flying with me. So the idea of flying with my child was a totally relatable thing. The pilot and the boy continued to wave, smile, and talk as they slowly trundled through the airspace our strike group had so carefully prescribed for coalition training operations. As I escorted them, the pilot banked his big plane to the north, and when they neared Iranian national waters, I turned south, collected my wingman, and returned to the ship. That night, I recounted the details of my eventful flight in a journal. My journal entry ended with the words, "I hope we don't go to war with Iran. If we do, I will do what I must, but it will make me very sad." How was it that my interaction with this man and this boy from another country had so changed my perception of a place that I had never seen? The explanation struck me. Peace is personal. It is only human to fear the unknown. It is only human to resent and distrust those whom we misunderstand. It is my firm belief that effective diplomacy and maintenance of lasting peace hinge upon fundamental interpersonal tenets: respect, communication, and understanding. If you disagree with me or find my assertion naive, please consider this. The United States and Russia are two countries at odds with each other. We levy sanctions against Russian leaders, oppose their global influence, and decry their disregard for the values and rights we hold dear. And yet, even as this conflict perpetuates on terra firma, right this moment, our astronauts and their cosmonauts rely on each other for their very survival aboard the International Space Station. We trust their engineers, scientists, and technicians to design and build rockets to transport our citizens to and from space. How is this possible? It is possible because we are not individually bound by the policies or posturing of nations. When we free ourselves to respect, communicate, and understand, we prove that peace is personal. I encourage each of you to put the idea that peace is personal into practice by approaching and receiving others respectfully, communicating openly, and listening closely so that you are able to understand the experiences and ethos that shape each other's lives. Thank you for your attention. Wherever you go, may you bring peace.
Thank you very much, Paul. We have another Navy veteran here with us today, and that is Leon Tackett. Leon is originally from Paso Robles, although he left our town to go to high school in Seattle and graduate from there, and went right into the Navy after that time, served 27 years, most of it in the explosive ordnance disposal end of that. And he retired from the Navy, came back here, and now he and his wife Cindy are up at Tackett Family Vineyards, where he makes exceptionally good wine. And you should all go up there sometime and check it out because it's fantastic up on Von Dolen Road. He's done an amazing job raising funds for the EOD Warrior Foundation, and really just a remarkable amount of money that Leon has raised for that organization to help folks heal, those folks who've served their country to heal. And Leon has also been named an ambassador to California by the EOD Warrior Foundation. We're very happy that he could make it today and talk to us about how that organization is helping heal those who serve their country. So please welcome Leon Tackett.
Around, read them up a little bit and stuff. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate the time. I have a lot more slides in the 10 minutes, but I'll fire through these pretty fast for you. Just kind of explain a little bit about who we are, what the EOD Warrior Foundation is. So Dan did mention that EOD is Explosive Ordnance Disposal, but in a nutshell, what that is your military's bomb squad. You can just start firing. I don't know who's running the slides. Is it me? Do I push them? Oh, all right. Right? Just the arrow. There it is. Okay. There it is. Explosive Ordnance Disposal. So your military's bomb squad. I guess I need to sit in front of this. Hope you can hear me. You know, a lot of us say it's the most dangerous job in the military, and I think a lot of us will agree. You got this kid that's going to run down range to a device that's put there to maim or kill somebody. and their job is to go in there and take care of it. It's all 4 services. It's the only true joint program that we have in the military. All 4 services go to the exact same school down at Eglin Air Force Base, and they all train together and do the same things, except for us Navy guys. We have to be special. We get to go through dive school because we take care of the underwater ordnance as well, your sea mines and your torpedoes and such. First in, last out. So, in 2003, Qasar, it wasn't SEAL team, it was EOD that was there first. We go in and we clear all the ports and make sure that they're clear for our troops to get there and do their job. They're the ones that go into the houses first. They're the ones that go everywhere, buildings, it doesn't matter. EOD goes in first and they're the last to leave to make sure everything is clear and ready for everybody else to do their job. Enabling access is the key term, and EOD up is the cry, because they're usually in the back of the team and they'll be coming up if somebody sees something bad, EOD up, and then they go in and they take care of the problem. So now the sad part of it, 133 killed since 9/11. It's been a pretty rough 17 years since that happened, a lot. But a lot of it too, the reason I'm here and doing what I do is the ones that are left over, the ones that were wounded, whether it's physical or whether they're hidden injuries, PTSD, TBI, post-traumatic stress, and traumatic brain injury. Very bad. We just lost a Navy kid last week. Took his life. So we're trying to fix it. So let's talk a little bit about all our veterans real quick. So there's a number a lot of people see. You hear about in the news too often, 22. It's 22 veterans a day taking their lives. It's basically about 1 every hour. And there you go. I mean, this kid last week, 25 years, he was in the military, got out, and just the demons were just too much. He had multiple combat tours, and it was just too much. And he said it was time to go. So we got to knock it off. It's a number bigger than 0. We need to get that number down to 0. There's a lot of organizations out there working on it, trying. Right here in San Miguel, we have the Mighty Oaks. It's a great organization that's taken care of. They bring a lot of kids in, and they're doing great success. Boulder Crest Retreats, another one. They've got a couple of those around. We're trying to get these guys going, but it takes money, and we're trying to figure that out. But the big thing with that number is, only 21 states report their numbers. So we don't even know if that 22 is accurate. So we're trying to get our hands around that. It's just a guess. But number crunchers go in there and they tell us that's what it is, but nobody really knows. So it's community support and what we can do. Dan mentioned that we're doing a lot of fundraising at TACIT. I handed out a flyer. Right now we're on a $500,000 fundraising campaign that we're working on here, and it's locally. It's based out of Templeton. There's a little green flyer going around. We're doing a raffle for a vehicle. And it's for 2 different foundations, actually. We teamed up with another local foundation called Quality of Life Plus. It's actually based out of Cal Poly, where they challenge engineering students to help veterans with challenges that they have. Maybe there's somebody that can't get their legs on right, or their wounds are so severe they can't wear a proper prosthetic, so they design different prosthetics for them. It's a great foundation. They're doing a lot of good work. That's why we're working with them. And it's down there on the bottom. But it takes a lot of communities coming together and people helping and just realizing that this is an issue. 27 years that I was in, I personally never met anybody that was pro-war. Nobody is that I personally know. But there's a job to do. It's protecting our country. These kids did it. They stood up. And some of them paid a dear price. And it's my passion to take care of them and make sure that we're taking care of them into the future. EOD Warrior Foundation, our big thing is emergency financial relief, is one of the top key points that we do. When somebody gets wounded, their family is completely disrupted, as you can imagine. So there's a lot of steps in that process. Well, in that process, maybe there's a spouse member that needs to be with them. Well, maybe that spouse member has a job. She or he has to pay the bills. But we'll still get them to where they need to be for free. We'll pay their way, and we'll also cover their bills while they're trying to take care of their spouse. So there's that. And right off the bat, they get like $4,000, I think, and then there's more grants that they can get down the road. Education is one of the keys that I like. We do have a wall, unfortunately, for our the 133 members that you saw before. So those children of those family and the spouses automatically get scholarships, 4-year scholarships to college. So it's a great piece of that, what we do that I personally think is one of the best. Hope and Wellness, we do a lot of retreats. We just did one in Colorado. Families went to Colorado, they kayaked down the Colorado River. And it was just bringing all these families together that had been through conflict, had been through, trying to figure out where their place and purpose is in life anymore after the military. And all these families come together and they connect. And it's a great piece. And then we have the memorial care that we have to take care of down in Florida. A couple numbers, I won't go through each of those, with you, but like I said, the biggest one that I like to key on is the scholarship program. We're really getting up and above on this thing. I'd like to see it more and more everything, but it's $5,000 a year for 4 years for their scholarship, and we're going to keep increasing that number to where we're basically just paying for these kids to go to school, and that's where we need to be. Oh. My voice anyway. Okay. How's that?
You're doing great.
Better?
It's just the frequency.
Okay. I'll try to talk more direct into it. Hopefully everybody's been able to hear some of it. So questions, brainstorming, what we can do together. I'm happy to discuss anything with anybody at any time. Well, I could hear that. That went up. What can we do together? How do we make this better for our veterans? Like I said, the veterans and what's going on out there, it's my passion. It's what I do. I mean, it's what we do for Tackett Family Vineyards, our winery that Dan mentioned. I mean, that's our front runner. We just did another fundraiser for a service dog. We did a whole series of wines specifically to raise money for a service dog, for a service animal, for one of our service members. So we're hoping that has a big impact on somebody's life. We'll see how it plays out, but we're getting there. And I'd like to thank you very much. Short and sweet.
Thank you, Leon. And these talks, both by Paul and Leon, just go to the peril and the price of these conflicts. And it's something that we need to eliminate from our world. And that's understanding what folks go through in these things is a big part of that. And speaking of that, our next group is the Alternative to Violence Project. We're very happy to have you here today. This has been an all-volunteer conflict transformation program. AVP groups and facilitators are active in communities, schools, and prisons across the United States and many other countries. And here to tell us about it today and actually do a little bit of a demonstration, we hope, is Roger Brown, Nancy Vimla, and Gracie Wagner. Thank you very much for being here. You can pull that out too.
Okay. Hi, my name is Roger Brown, and I'm really feel grateful for the opportunity to come here and share with you what AVP is all about. And we have just but a few of our group of facilitators to come and share and try to help you experience an example of what Alternative to Violence is all about. And without spending too much time, because time is always of the essence in AVP. We always run short of time. I'm just going to move right into somewhat of an introduction, and then we will. We have a small agenda that we try to follow, and we'll see what happens, and you'll learn more about who we are as individuals a little later on. And there is no leaders, there is no instructors. We are all facilitators, and we're all on equal ground here. So I'm a little taken aback by having to stand up at a podium and tell you things. Okay, and we always do things together. So, is there anything my facilitators need to add to that I've said so far? Okay. So again, my name is Roger Brown. I did my first AVP workshop, seems like decades ago, but it was in 2002, and it was life-changing for me. And that's why I stand before you today. you'll hear more about me later.
Yeah, and my name is Grayson, and one thing about AVP is, like Roger said, we're all equals, and AVP seeks to create a connection, and one way that the Alternative to Violence Project seeks that connection is through seeing the best in ourselves. And so what I'm going to do is just ask each one of us to identify an adjective, a positive adjective, and attach that adjective to your name. I tend to be a little bit serious, so I identified Goofy. My name's Grayson, so Goofy Grayson. And
For many years, I was Nifty Nancy. And then I felt like, hey, I feel pretty nifty. I'm going to go forward. And now I'm Numinous Nancy.
And the name I picked for myself years ago, because I didn't feel so much so, is Reliable, Roger. And that helped me develop into the person that's standing before you today, because today you can rely on.
And then throughout the course of the workshop, which usually takes place over 2, maybe 3 days, when we identify ourselves or when we identify the other person, we will we'll use that adjective. So I'll raise my hand, I'll say Goofy Grayson, or I'm Numinous Nancy, or Reliable Roger. And what we found is that oftentimes, throughout the course of our lives, we can be hard on ourselves, and we see others and we see the world the way we see ourselves. And so when we can see the best in ourselves, we can see the best in others. And so it's just kind of a practice that throughout the course of the workshop, just kind of, I don't know, it's affirming. So has anybody found a positive adjective that they've attached to their name that they'd like to share? Volunteer?
Follow through.
Follow through?
Phyllis, follow through.
Phyllis, oh, beautiful. Very nice, very nice. Anybody else? Is there anybody that's been through the workshop that has a positive adjective that they've attached to their name that they'd like to share? Anybody? No?
Lucky Lindy.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Lucky Lindy. All right.
Quiet and peaceful heart.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Then we'll go ahead and I'm going to pass the mic to.
Maybe I really don't need a microphone. I don't think I got a pretty projecting voice, but I'll stand here. I just like to add to what Grayson has said, that the reason we choose these adjective names is to help encourage connection with each other, and possibly some attributes that we might want to help ourselves along with as far as feeling better about ourselves. And that's why we try to encourage that. Although I've been in some workshops where people would sit there, nope, I made Fred and that's it. And that's okay. That's okay. They seem to loosen up after that two-day thing.
We're going to now do concentric circles.
Nancy, please use the mic because we're recording this.
Oh. Well, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Nancy Vimla, and I took my first basic workshop. We do have, our workshops are usually 20 hours. And when I took that basic workshop, it was in the community, and it was a diverse workshop. We always go for as diverse as we can get, and there's usually 20 or less people. Plus, we always work in teams, AVP teams. That's really important. And so when I took my first workshop, I said, "Oh my God, I love this so much," and you'll never believe the reason. It's because I was able to be silly, and we were all silly together, and it was it just made me say, "I'm going to do this for the rest of my life," and it's so wonderful to see people laughing and just being silly together, and then also seeing people. Learning new things, like never realizing something before. And it's all from being in this circle and doing exercises together and Light and Livelies, we'll tell you about that, together, and for this 20 hours, and everyone just has a great time and just loves each other. And that's, it's just a wonderful thing. I've been doing it every month at least for the last almost 10 years. And so I'm going to pass it to Roger, who's going to facilitate an exercise called concentric circles.
Concentric circles is one of the exercises that is very near and dear to my heart. I love this thing. I've seen it. It is so connecting. I think I failed to mention that AVP is experiential. What you are willing to bring to this workshop is what you're going to get out of it. I'm not going to tell you what you should do, what you have to do, or what you're supposed to do. But what we do is we bring everybody into a circle where we sit equally. And with concentric circles, we generally would have the group split into twos. There would be a circle facing outward and then a circle facing inward. But this room is not quite positioned for something like that. So to introduce yourselves to each other, say, because sometimes in the workshops I've been, we don't know each other. You probably know the person that's next to you. And all I'm going to ask you to do, this is a speaking exercise and also a listening exercise. So actually all I'm going to ask you to do is to turn to your partner. One of you pick the letter A and the other one will be B. So I'm going to say that A speaks first and the B's, and I'll tell you what the B's are going to do. They're just going to listen intently. Since there is an essence of time, all I'm going to do is give you the first question, and that is, I would like you to finish the sentence. My favorite role model in life is, and why? Who's first? A. A goes first. Thank you. My favorite role model in life is, and why? Okay, that's time. Time. I forgot to mention that there is a timekeeper on this, and I forgot to tell you that because of time with this presentation, you only had 7 seconds to answer that question. But I appreciate the volunteering of activity with connecting. And so now I would like to switch roles and have the A's just listen intently while the B's explain and finish the sentence. My favorite role model in life is, and why? Go ahead, 7 seconds. Time? 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 See how easy I am? I gave you guys 15 seconds. Okay, now for the second question, because what this exercise is connecting. It's connecting on somewhat uplifting and shallow levels, but then we also like to go deep. And and we usually don't run this exercise until probably into the 15th hour of a 20-hour workshop. Okay, so but the second question, because you guys are so eager and connecting already, I'm preaching to the choir in here today, the second question is, a time in my life I experienced violence was, and how I reacted to that. And the A's will go first, and I'm going to give you 15. A time I experienced violence in my life and how I reacted to that. Go ahead. Time? 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 Oh, that's better. I'm a bit of a control freak. That's why I like this exercise. So now I'd like to switch roles, have the A's listen intently while the B's finish the sentence. A time I experienced violence in my life was and how I reacted. Go ahead. Okay, that's time. Time, excuse me, I'm sorry. Time. Usually I got a real big timer with an alarm on it, you know. I like that. Because I have one of these things that I refer to as a Star Trek device. Does amazing things. Just getting used to it. So let me just ask after let's say a 20 or 30 minute concentric circle exercise, I would gather everyone back into the circle, and then I would ask for volunteers like possibly Dory to explain to me how that was for her. Dory? Yes, I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah.
Because it felt like we just barely started to express something and then time was up. So it was like a really good first sentence to a book that makes you want to read more. But then it's like someone closed the book.
Anybody else like to share their experience, if it was hard or just a simple answer?
Just remembering it brought back the emotions of when it happened, even though I was this big.
Mm-hmm. I'll take one more. I heard somebody in the back.
I said it was painful.
Painful. Painful. You know, you heard Nancy say, I just want to speak to that. You heard Nancy say how fun AVP is. What made AVP fun for me is when I was able to open myself and experience the pain. Concentric circles is one of the most viable exercises that I think that I helped open me up when I took my workshop. back in 2002. And that is the dynamics of what we do. We connect on that painful level in all AVP workshops, or we try to facilitate that trusting atmosphere to do that in. And that's where the magic happens, because we all come from different walks of life, but the one thing we share is the same pain. When I hurt and I feel my pain and you share your pain with me, it's the same pain. It took me 38 years of my life to learn that. And I'm still learning because it's hard. With that, I think we want to move back up into that light stuff, and we're going to turn it back over to Nancy for what we like is live and lively. Because after we go down deep, we need to come back up and experience a little fun.
Okay. So, Numinous Nancy, we always say our name when we start talking, so I'm going to say that. And so when I picked this light and lively, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a big group, and we're not going to be in a circle. And what is a good light and lively for that? Because usually they're kind of active, or you're standing up, or you need connection. So I was looking through, we just recently, AVP USA recently came out with a book like this thick of light and livelies, and I was looking through it, and this one came up, and it's called the Chortle Chorus. And so what it is that it's not, when I read this, I thought, oh my God, can I do this? Because it's, we are going to get to be silly during this. And so we're going to take a little time to just practice a little before we do it, because what basically it is it's a laughing. We're going to be laughing, and once we're going to practice a little laughing, and then I'm going to hand this over, this microphone over to Roger, and I'm going to be. Thank you. When I keep my hands like this, we're just going to laugh lightly. And then as I go out like this, we'll laugh louder and louder and louder. And then I'm going to just play with it for a while, okay? So let's just have a little, thank you. Let's just practice a little before we start, okay? Don't put it too close. So, let's just kind of go, just kind of wiggle around a little. Okay, you guys are good. Okay. Okay, so let's start. So don't forget, when it's like this, we're just lightly laughing, okay? Okay. Thank you so much. You were fantastic, and I loved it. That was fun. That was really fun. And now we're going to, I just want to see what we're going to do. Is it history. We just wanted to give you a little history of AVP. In 1973, I believe it was around there, that there was the Attica riots, a prison in New York. And a prison nearby, Green Haven, New York, prison, there was a think tank there of older prisoners. And they said, we want a program that can help us and the young prisoners coming in so that they can learn how to change their life so that they don't come back once they leave. And, this is a long story short, but they asked the Quakers, who are known for their peace building and their peace work, they asked them to come and join with them to put this program together. And so in 1975 was the very first AVP workshop in Greenhaven, New York. And since then, we are now in 34 states and 54 countries. And the way most of the countries joined is the Quaker Friends Peace Team would go into these countries after, these terrible conflicting wars. And, where villagers who used to live, in peace together were like totally apart and, just hurting. And, because neighbors had killed their sons and just horrible, horrible things. And so when AVP the Friends Peace Team went in, they brought AVP with them. And they trained people so that they could keep doing these workshops in all these different countries. And that's what we do here too. So anyway, that's a little bit of the history. Thank you. And then, so now we just, I feel like I've kind of given you an idea why I'm here. So I'd like to hand it over to Grace to let her know, so she can let you know why she is here for.
Okay, so Goofy Grayson. And I've been doing AVP for about almost 4 years now, facilitating. And I joined AVP out of, I guess, a desire to get more connected with my heart and my feelings. And what I found through AVP is that certainly we're all connected. And the more I hear other people's experience and experience their feelings, the more I am able to experience mine and take responsibility for my feelings and not blame others. And I guess that really is it, at the heart of it. I mean, I could go on, but it's a beautiful thing when I can have the courage and trust myself enough to, in my relationships, just sit with my feelings and trust that the other person won't abandon me if I tell them that I'm angry at them or I'm hurt. And know that it's okay to be angry at somebody and not blame them, but just to own it. I guess, I don't know if that's even okay to say, but that really is it. I have a huge heart and I'm really emotional, and I spent most of my life blaming other people for the way they made me feel, and that didn't work so well for me at all. But now I find that when I sit in a circle and I hear that other people feel the same way that I do, it makes me feel normal. So I try to do that as much as possible. And it helps my head be connected with my heart and my actions. And I love that. It feels really good. So that's it. And I'm not so violent. I used to, which I admit I used to be. Felt really good to break things. Sorry about that. Now I don't break things so much. And I'm a lot more loving. So that's it. I'm going to give the mic to somebody else before I say too much. There we go.
And she said she was going to be brief. So, I got 2 minutes and 36 seconds left. And how can I share you a lifetime of my pain to let you know what AVP has done for me? By the time I was 21 years old, I had developed into a type of individual that I was so emotionally shut down and disconnected from my heart. That I sat in a courtroom where there was nobody on my side that didn't think it was a good idea to put me in a cage for the rest of my life. And I sat in that cage for the next 35 years trying to figure it out. How did I get there? What did I do? I'm not a bad guy. Growing up, I never felt I was a part of anything. I always felt disconnected from my environment and the people in that environment. I felt rejected. 17 years into that life sentence, I was introduced to AVP. And AVP opened up my heart. I thought I was going crazy because here I am, a tough convict Scotsman. And all of a sudden, I got feelings that I don't know nothing about. I am out of control with these feelings. Where did this start at? Well, that was the catalyst. It started my transformation into being what I think of and try to be a decent human being. And that's what my goal is today. As it is my life. And I hope if you people know of anyone in your neighborhood, your communities that might need a little bit of help. The kid standing on the street corner that you think is a gang member and you're scared of him, and when you see him, you cross the street because you think he might have a knife or he might try to hurt you or take something from you. All he's doing is standing there wanting to be accepted, wanting to know that he's a part of something. Today, because of AVP, today I have the knowing that I am a part of a community, that you no longer dictate who I am. Today I have a voice. 40 years ago, I didn't use my voice, and I allowed another human being to be brutally murdered because I didn't think my voice mattered. AVP has helped me find my voice, and that's why I stand here today. I was trying to think of, with 7 seconds left, I was trying to think of how can I let you know that you're just like me? Well, one of the things is the Rotary symbol. AVP has the same symbol. In the center that we're going to pass out, we have brochures that has our symbol of what we call transforming power. That in the center of that hub that you talked about, the AVP calls that our point of transforming power, which is the same thing, that it gives us our ability, if we're connected with ourselves in here, that we have the ability to reach out to others in our community and connect. Oh, there's that buzzer. You know, an extra minute. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So the last thing I say, because I'm way over time and I have a long wind today. The shining example that I can give you is the best is Miss Dory Stone, who stood up in front of you, because I had the honor of facilitating her basic workshop about 4 years ago. And she is a product of AVP and what AVP can do in your life. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. There we go. I don't either. Well, thank you very much, Roger and Nancy and Grayson. Thank you very much. And there's Well, speaking of education, we are very grateful today that Chris Williams can make it to our meeting to introduce our next speaker. Chris has worked in education for over 22 years as a teacher, vice principal, director of human resources, and assistant superintendent of human resources. Please welcome Chris Williams. Thank you.
Never seen a mic that I didn't like before. So really excited to be here. So one of the pleasures that I have is get to introduce Rich Clayton, but I also wanted to share just a little about the district and the organization and be able to open that up as we go. So again, I've been in Paso for just over 4 years now, and we put a lot of passion into our educational system, just as you did today, and you did a fine job. And when we look at our organization, we began to look at what the context was and what our greatest needs were on really redeveloping an educational system that could be nationally recognized, but also providing programs that would align to what the community as well as students needed and deserved. So many of you may know, when I got here, we put how many of you know what VAPA stands for? We got some visual and performing arts, right? So one of the areas that we looked at is what can we do to integrate and implement a VAPA program for every child in elementary school, middle school, and high school. So we've had great success within our community and county with our arts program and some of our professional artists that sit here and always help me out and also push us to continue what the vision is with VAPA. For example, when we looked at our elementary opportunities for our children, we are one of the only districts that have aligned a visual and performing art program weekly for our children. So example, every kindergartner student that comes into our district receives the intro of exploratory music. First grade, they receive art, music, which is choir, dance, and beginning of musical theater in first grade. And this is weekly, which every kid has that opportunity, and it's a requirement as well. Second grade, we move into the novice to advanced of choir. And again, I say that because Rich would be an advanced person in choir, and if you heard me sing, I would definitely be below novice, right? But he's the musician here up to the right. And then we also continue with the dance and the art and also physical education, in which he's going to talk a little about as well. And then in third grade, it's our first year being able to roll out last year of piano, that every kid and student within Paso Joint Unified gets a 12-week unit of intensive piano that aligns with spatial temporal development and our ST math program. So think about when you were in elementary school, having the opportunity to actually have piano that's taught as core instruction and curriculum on a weekly basis to all of our students. Why aren't you guys excited? You guys been here all day? Rich, I'm gonna need a dance, right? We're gonna have to get moving over here. And then fourth grade as we go, we continue to build on that, where we have music theater, we have advanced dance, we also have art that's integrated as well, and continue to build what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. In fifth grade, we have band. We also teach kids recorder in fourth grade as well. I did forget to mention that. And then instrumental, so that they have a required music lesson weekly, required dance weekly, required art weekly, and then also 2 days of physical education weekly, so that we can provide support and also connectivity for students. With the Brescia family, many of them know, wonderful supporters. We also were able to extend our art program with Studios on the Park with some wonderful people, Sasha and Ann, that have been a huge help for us, not only with Art Smart that had been going on 8 years before I was here, but able to expand that where we actually have our own art studio within Studios on the Park, that our students actually work in the art studio, and believe it or not, they get paid to work as interns in there, and they get to produce their art, show their art, and sell their art, and they make 80% of their selling of the art, and then the 20% goes back into the studio. So you think about having students with opportunity, that we had 15 students last year alone that sold art and became professional artists for the first time in their life, and they were high school students, right? So it's pretty exciting to be able to see. And if you have ever seen our high school and been a part of the theater program with Mrs. Goodnow out of New York, she's absolutely fantastic. And we have over 200 students that perform quarterly in our different plays that we have at the high school. And there's huge emphasis with that. We had our first 5 full ride scholarships for the arts last year, from NYU to NIU to UCLA. So being able to focus not only on what Rich is going to talk about in a little bit with athletics and movement, but also to focus on the arts so we can recognize the outstanding students that we have going through. You guys ready yet? Excited? Okay, all right, good. So boring. See, right? I need a little excitement. You're smiling. So with that, we also looked at the integration of the social emotional need and creating a PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, which is a framework to refocus on teaching behavior on a daily basis, right? So some of us that come from families that may have mom and dad at home or maybe split homes, you know, kids come with what they know, right? Parents don't keep the best kids in the closet at home. We get the opportunity to impact and influence kids on a daily basis. And without a framework of behavior and the social emotional support and the ability to find ways to get kids connected, you're going to have less chance of success for them to continue on to be successful in school. So the other components that we've added in elementary for after school programs, which Rich is going to talk about again, but we're the only district in the county that actually provides elementary sports between 3rd and 5th grade after school, that they actually compete intra-district teams. So we have girls soccer, boys soccer, cross country, track and field, elementary soccer, wrestling. We have over 900 students that participate in those sports on a seasonal basis, which is pretty amazing. As mom and dads know, from 3 o'clock to 4, it's nice to have kids being able to be involved in something as well. A few other pieces I'm going to highlight because I only have 50 minutes, right? I'm just, oh, it's 5. I knew there was a 5 in there somewhere. Is the other focus I wanted to look at is our high school, for example. Just 4 years ago, we had 36% of our classes, which we weren't proud of and we wanted to adjust. 36% of our classes that were actually approved A through G, that were allowing kids to go into a university. Remember the old requirements in high school where you had 4 years of math, 3 years of science? If those are not A through G approved courses, you're less likely to get into a university, right? So what we are able to do is work alongside of Cuesta College first, and we now offer 68 classes on our high school campus alone that are dual enrollment courses. The kids sit in our classes from trained certified teachers that also have the correct degrees for college, that we have kids earning college credits and high school credits concurrently in our high school campus. And we had over 71% of our seniors last year that walked across the stage with at least 3 college credits as high school students, right? And we had 2 young ladies that actually earned their AA degree last year in high school without ever having to step foot on the college, right? 67 different classes. We started 4 years ago with 4, right? And the A through G, we've been able to move from 36%. So now your high benchmark is 80%, and we're at 79% because we were able to rewrite all the courses, submit those to the UC systems and Ivy League, and have those approved and authorized so we have more kids having the opportunity to go into 4-year universities, or 2-year for that matter. As you guys know, Cuesta, with Gil Stork, who just retired, had a fantastic partnership with all the high schools in the county with the Promise Scholarship. So if you didn't know this, if your son or daughter graduated from a San Luis high school, you would be able to get 1 full year of college paid for at Cuesta upon exiting. So now think about us. How many of you have kids in college or going to college soon? Nobody? Really? Come on. All right. Maybe a few of you have kids that graduated college, I think. Okay. All right, we're good. All right. I'm getting, there too. I have 2 kids that graduated college now. I'm feeling like, wow. Anyway, with that being said, they've been able to expand that now. And when you focus on equity and providing high-level opportunities for students, sometimes funding can be in the way of kids expanding their educational opportunity. So think about kids having 67 to 68 courses, high school and summer school, that they can earn junior college credits or college credits, and then go into Cuesta and have a full 2 years paid for now. It's amazing, right? 2 full years of paid for, no cost at all to those students. And that's been a great partnership to be able to expand where we're at. Our high school was about 49% ranked in the nation 4 years ago. We just now became in the top 8% in the country based on our graduation rate, our college career rate, our career tech ed pathways, and and all of the success we've had of kids going into UC schools as well as Ivy League schools. We had 29 of our own students last year, which was the highest in the county, that got to go through and get into Cal Poly. If you guys know, Cal Poly had 62,000 applications last year, and they had 4,400 students get into Cal Poly. And we had the highest percentage being able to get in from our high school into Cal Poly last year, which we're really proud of. Especially 4 years ago, we had 7, and we're continuing to multiply that as we go. And it's a lot of excitement. Again, I was only supposed to do Rich's introduction, but I told you when I get a mic, I like to start talking. This young man, individual, is coming from Central Unified. He was in Kingsburg before. He's got an amazing story that when you know this guy, I always say to know him is to love him. because he's got one of the biggest hearts in the world, and he's extremely passionate and purposeful and really here to influence the lives of kids as well as adults. If there's one guy that I ever want to give the mic to in front of my entire staff, I've trusted this man because I know the influence he has and the ability that he has to connect with kids because of the story that he walked his life through, losing his parents at a very early age, you know, being a college athlete that was on his own, but also someone that was one of the best educational teachers that I've ever seen in a classroom, to be able to come out and help and expand that opportunity. So Rich has been our district athletic director, our wellness coordinator, our community outreach consultant, and kind of my right-hand guy the last 3 years. And now he's actually working with our progressive student discipline because of his knack and ability to sit down with kids and reach deep in their heart and impact where they are, where they're going, or where they might need additional support. So again, Rich Clayton is coming on up. You didn't get a loud round of applause either, I know. I think we need an espresso or something here, Rich, I don't know. So again, dear friend, again, to know him is to love him, and you guys are gonna be in for quite a treat. So thank you, Mr. Clayton.
Thank you for the introduction. Glad to be here. I have to say thank you to Nancy for inviting me and having me here. It was just on a whim. Her and I got together. My wife had met with her, and then we started talking, and next thing she said, you need to be a speaker at my engagement. And I thought, oh yeah, sure, no problem. You know, people never follow up on that stuff. And here I am. Do we have a clicker? There we go. But I'm really excited. I'm passionate not only just about people, but passionate about our job and our school district and everything that we do and working with young people. And it's people like yourselves who shaped people like myself. And I get excited. They say you're supposed to start with a joke, so I'm going to start with an educational joke. What did 0 say to 8? He said, hey, nice belt. You know, and the biggest piece is this: when you meet people who, people use the word passionate, but I just know I was meant for this. And when I say this, that is education, but I know I was meant for people. I was meant for it. I was born to be around people. I was born to give them positive energy. It's what I love to do. So I never shy away from it. And the big thing, it was said earlier, is I promise you this: if you sit down and talk to people, there isn't a person that you couldn't learn to love once you learn their story. And everybody has a different background. Every person we talk about in school, they bring a backpack, and all those kids have different things in their backpack that they're bringing with them. Some of them have parents who are not together. Some of them didn't have anything to eat in the morning. Some of them don't have any parents at all. And so for me, a little bit of background: people are inspired or imprinted in their minds in 3 major ways, and there's a lot of brain research. The number one thing is traumatic or emotional experience, the highest of the highs, the lowest of the lows. We also remember music well. We can think of a song and hear it, and it'll take us back to a time and a place. The other thing is metaphors, and we use lots of metaphors in the world to really connect our brain. But what I want to tell you is, I think the reason I was meant for this is because I was imprinted. And while it was a tragic or a traumatic experience, it made me who I was. And there's a famous saying: if I had the life that I wanted to live, I probably wouldn't be the person I am today, right? So if I had the things that I thought I needed, or envied the people who had things I didn't, I probably wouldn't be who I was today. And this part always gets me because it's my life. This is me. And when I was 4 months old, my mom and my brother were killed in a car accident. And so I never knew my mom or my brother. And I get to see my grandma tonight. She's my favorite lady in the whole world. And she helped me. This is not a sad story, by the way. It's a sad part, and it always gets me. But it's a great story. It's a great story. And my dad, this is a great picture. There's me again, a little bit of a different haircut than I have today. My dad, he did a great job. My grandma helped raise me, and a lot of people picked up where there were missing pieces, and my dad helped me. And then when I was in high school, my dad passed away. He had cancer. So he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I lived in Redding, California at that time, and my dad passed away. And at that point, I became what we call a ward of the court. And so the reason I tell you this is I was a product of people like yourselves. This is not a sad story. The feelings we feel come from the things that we focus on. If I would have taken a different approach, I might have said, well, the world is a terrible place. look at all these things that are unfair. Look at all these things that happen to me and all these other kids have great things, but I didn't look at it that way. I really never felt that way. I had a lot of people, I did feel sad, but I had a lot of people looking out for me. I had a grandmother who would do anything in the world for me and pick me up. I had coaches, teachers, people in the community who knew me, and maybe I was just a really energetic kid and people wanted to look out for me, but they did. For the last half of my senior year, I didn't have to go to foster care. I lived with people. They helped me out. They gave me food. I did not feel that I was, and I had a lot of things to deal with, but I didn't feel that life was not going to be able to go on. I didn't feel that way. And so I want you to know this, because I meet a lot of people, and that's not to dismiss people's feelings either. I learned something very quickly. When I went into education, I learned that the kids in the room, they could have everything in the world, and I could look at them a little bit different, but they could be more miserable and feel that their life was more heavier than I ever felt my own life was. And that doesn't dismiss their feelings. It's not the idea that, oh, you don't know what you're talking about because I've been through much worse than you. I've never said that to anyone in my life. I wouldn't. Why would I? I don't know how it feels. The feeling of empathy. I don't know what it feels like to be in your position. And in your mind, I noticed it's actually worse. It's weighing on you more. And so I was thankful. I went back to my high school teachers and staff in Redding, California, and I got to tell them this. I didn't realize until later how important they were, but I told them, I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for the things that I learned there and what I had around me, and I bring this up because I talked to all these people today. And these are all my different coaches, and I wrote a bunch of jokes for them, like Coach Worley, how to gracefully break a clipboard. But I learned a lot from people. I did, and they didn't know it. They had no idea. I was just a kid. I was very quiet. I was not like I am now. Even though I still get a little nervous talking to people about it, I was just a quiet kid I didn't really cause a lot of trouble. But I also didn't ask for help. And sometimes those are the most important people. And these people help me without ever knowing they do it, and you guys will do it too. You will never know you impacted a kid. I had a coach, his name was Coach Arrow. He's not on there because I was giving the speech and talking about him. He took me. I did not go to college. I graduated, and I didn't go to college. I never signed up. I didn't have anyone to help me. I didn't understand how you even did that. To me, it was so far out there from what I was experiencing that going to college just seemed too much, like filling out papers and all these things. He came to my house in probably August of 1996. He found me because I was running away from him or just ducking him. People were like, hey, Coach Arrow's looking for you. Why is he looking for me? I already graduated. Leave me alone. That's what I was thinking in my head. I just want to deal with life as I can. And he came and got me, and he took me to the junior college, and he lined me up at Shasta Junior College, and he gave me a blank check, and he said, sign up for classes. And here I am standing in a line. He had no business taking me there. And when you ask him, to this day, I still talk to him. I get to open for him every once in a while. He took me to St. Louis because he's a great guy, and he spoke there. And I spoke of the power of just being a good person around him. And he stood me in line, and I said, that one thing, which doesn't seem, he says it's nothing. He just thought it was the right thing to do. He just grabbed me, gave me a check, put me in line. I'm in line. I have no idea what I'm signing up for. I don't even know when school starts, but now I have to. And that thing was, I took it with me for the rest of my life. I took it with me. I felt like I owed him something, and not in a bad way. I felt I owed a person who would take time out of their life and their money. I feel like there's something bigger there. And on the other side, my grandmother, who I'm going to see tonight in Ventura, I'm taking her to a country concert, 86 years old, having a great time. She told me, though, and this is important how you talk about people. She told me, not in a false way. When I was little, she raised me all the way up. She said, you're going to be special. You're different. Because I was supposed to be in the car. That's a part of the story I don't ever tell, is I was in the car and my mother dropped me off with my uncle and picked up another person. So when they said 3 people are in the car, you need to come identify the 3 bodies to my grandparents, they assumed that I was one of them. When they looked down and they saw the people, remember back then you made a phone call and you drove all the way there, they noticed, where is the baby? And no one knew I was missing. My uncle, who is into drugs and would never be in charge of me, calls a day later and says, what the heck do I do with this baby? So my grandma always told me, and not in a false way, I want to put that out there. You're going to be special. You're going to do something. You're supposed to be here. I don't know what it is, but you're supposed to be here. If not just to save me. She says, you saved my life. I couldn't make it through. That was my daughter and, my grandson, and you saved me. And I always thought, I don't know, that got inside of me, though. It wasn't fake. And you are impacting people around you. I didn't learn this until later. I did not know this until I was in my 30s. And I started to realize, man, there's something special about this. Directly, these people, they hired me and overpaid me. They took me around. They called me all the time. They still call me. Indirectly, I saw them as role models. Career choices. I sat down at Sacramento State. I ended up getting a football scholarship. I told you this is a good story. And I got a master's degree. I don't know how, but I just kept going. And the thing is, they sat me down. They said, you have to declare a major. And I told them, I don't even know what job I would do. I just was going through it on my own and just trying to win every day. And I said, I want to be a coach. And they said, you can't be a coach. That doesn't pay anything. So like dreams dashed, well, how do I get to be a coach? Because my coach had a house. I know he did. How did he do that? And they said, well, you could be a teacher. Perfect. Sign me up. Whatever that is, I want to do it. And so they did impact me, whether they knew it or not. And I didn't know until later. I did not analyze all this. When I was in my 30s, I watched a video, Jim Valvano. Jim Valvano passed away from cancer as well, raised a lot of money. If you haven't seen this video, Cutting Down the Nets, it's worth 40 minutes of your life, I promise you. And Jim Valvano says in there, he gives this part and he says the gift his father gave him. And I knew that was the gift people gave me. He started talking about it and he said it and it hit me. I was like 38 years old, 37 years old. And I said, that's it. That's what it was. He says, my father was the single most important person in my entire life. And he never did anything important. He never had an important job. No one ever held him higher than anyone else, but he's the single most important person I ever met for one reason, because he believed in me. He believed. When I told him I was going to win the championship, he said, I'll be there, right? And I realized these people believed in me. You would never take someone, stand them in a line, and give them a blank check if you didn't believe they were going to do it. And by the way, I excelled much further in college than I ever did in high school. That's my phone, so I'm supposed to finish by now. But I excelled much further than I ever thought. And actually, my grades were better because I think I doubled up. It was like my grandma's counting on me. My coach is counting on me. All these people went out of their way because they believe in me. So I'm going to do myself one favor. I'm going to try as hard as I can. That was it. I'm going to try as hard as I can. And the thing is, a lot of good things turned out of that. And that belief is passed on. This is when I worked in Central, and we had a young man who was on national television with us, and I was the athletic director, and we flew, and we were on ESPN. It was the highlight of his career. Mr. Williams was there too, and his knee was blown out the first game of the year, and he missed his whole season, and he was not going on scholarship anymore. And I said to myself, and Mr. Williams was there, we're going to impact this kid. We're going to go see him, and we did. We went and saw this young man every single week. We played video games with him. We talked to him. We got him going. So he did his rehabilitation. He did not get a scholarship that year. He kept working out, doing everything he could, and then earned the scholarship after his senior year. The entire next season, he took a season off. And I only mentioned him because I knew that was my chance to give back, to do what was done for me. That was me standing in line, right? And I've done it many times because I start to recognize it like this is a chance. Now, that doesn't mean it always works out. It doesn't. But it means that I have to be the one to recognize it and do the best I can to try to help with it. And I want you to just, in your spare time, think about the word belief. You know, it asks you to do something that isn't there. We don't have factual evidence in it. I don't know this person's going to be successful. I don't know that driving over to pick someone up is going to help them. I just believe it. I think so strongly about it that I'm going to do it no matter what. I'm going to move quickly here. I'm trying to catch us up. We're running out of battery here. I'm going to move to the back here. Go ahead, hit it. Is it stuck? I can overcome. This ain't the hardest thing that ever happened to me in my life. I got it with me too. What's that? Here, let me go. 7 come 11. My grandma likes. There you go. I want to bring you back to that and just say that I really do believe this. And here's the word belief again. I do believe if I sat down with you and you sat down with me and we just had conversation, it may take time. People don't open up. I learned to open up later in my life because I just realized there were a lot of people who had a lot of things going on. You know, and I promise you this, people will strive to be worthy of that chance you've given them. I know because I was one of them. I believe it. You know, my coach, he asked me to do something. He said, tomorrow, can you please drive up here and help me? I'll drive up there. I need $10,000. I'll give him $10,000. I owe it to him. You know, I wouldn't do it 5 times because I don't have enough money for that, but... and that brings me to the school district where I work, and working in schools has just been tremendous for me, working with young people and also working in the community. I think I've expanded that. It was great to impact schools, but we really do believe every student will have success, and success looks different for every single kid. Some kids just coming on time is success. For me, not getting angry about the situation I was in school was a success. You know, I remember having those feelings like these kids are lucky. I don't know why, but it's okay. I'm going to be okay, you know, and you don't want to act on those things. Also, we want to get these kids to be successful with student success, student achievement in college, career, the community, but you have to mean it. Like, you have to be serious about it, because if we want these kids to be great in the community and have jobs, we got to have the people who already know what people need for jobs to come in and talk to them, because they don't believe us all the time. We're with them, I promise you. And Mr. Williams and the vision for what we're doing is to impact every kid, to really do that. And that's our athletic programs. This is not possible if people don't back it and believe in it. The difference is this is not just normal athletics. It's going on right now too. I had to miss it, but that's okay. It was important to be here too. Is we have kids outside running around, and this is the important part. It's free. Guess what you have to do to be on this club or this team? You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to get a ride. Your parents don't have to be excited about it. You literally have to be a good kid at school and do the right things. You don't have to be athletic either. And if you do all those things and you represent your school well and your teachers talk well about you, you're on the team and you get to play. And guess what? You're going to expose every single one of those kids to all of this fun stuff. And they might say, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Or they might say, hey, this is the first group of people that I've ever been involved in that I mean something to them. And I see it in kids all the time. They will run back to the kid in the very end who's so far behind. Most people would be inclined to say, man, this kid's not going to make it. And the kids will run with them. They love them. Talk about imprinting kids when they're young. That's what we're trying to do. This is important. It's not about winning. It's about being on a team, being a good teammate, having character. And you get to intervene. Here's what they're doing today. They're running cross country. And the kids don't care. You know how many kid complaints I've gotten for elementary athletics? 0. Not a lot of adults either. Because you train the adults. You say, this is not a club team. This is not about the winner destroying the second place person and the third place. This is about a bunch of kids standing out here and having a great day. And you let them go. Here's wrestling. It makes people nervous, but it's a good outlet for kids. There's a lot of kids like me. I don't know how to not touch people at school, so if I can wrestle later, I'm happy with it. Here's basketball, track and field. Look at the kids. All right, I'm going to finish up right now, but you also see it's not just about athletics, because I believe in the idea that humans got to explore everything, and there's art, dance, music. I play the guitar as well, because it's beauty of life, right? There's so many things out there. Is that the hook? That means I'm out? All right, no problem. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip to the last part, though, because this is it. It goes quick. I want you just to think of this, though. I want you to see the world with just different eyes when you look at things. Because we jump to that critical eye where it's like so easy to go, that's messed up, that's not right, that needs to be fixed. You don't know how to do that. Say, wait, how can I help? How can I help? Be careful how you interpret the world, because it is that way. If you see it that way, it's your truth. And that's scary. That's good, and it's scary at the same time. I tell people that, you know. So I believe it. So when you see a classroom, it's a place to volunteer. When you see a field, it's a place to go coach. When you see an area like this or people, it's a way to just spread your thoughts and then listen to theirs at the same time. So I want to say thank you for having me here, and I really, really appreciate, once again, you taking your time to stay here. I'm very grateful for you, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks very much. I think I heard a lot of belonging, belief, and inspiration there. Paul, I think he was running down your list a bit, so that's nice to see that going on in the school. So is Tim Bell in the room? Looks like he may have had an emergency at the animal hospital. So Steve, can we have you up to present? Maybe Tim will make it over here. So folks, Steve Martin is the mayor of Paso Robles. Once again, he was elected in 2014 for a 4-year term, so that's coming up this fall, and also served on city council and was mayor from 88 to 1990. So that's why I say mayor again. And Mayor Martin is also a former member of our Rotary Club, I believe, right? And he was not kicked out, so that means he could join again anytime if that works out. And the one thing folks do talk, especially about the mayor, and the one thing I really hear consistently about Mayor Martin is that he listens to everybody and he's a problem solver. And I really appreciate that approach to your leadership. And we're very happy to have you here today to talk to us about things that are going on in the community.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I love speaking about the city of Paso Robles and the people who live here. When Nancy asked if I would be a speaker at the Peace Conference, I thought, well, how do I tie the city in with peace? I mean, I work with things like wastewater treatment plants and, street repairs and things like that. So I did a lot of thinking about it, and I think there is a way to do that. So you tell me if I succeed at this, okay? But first, the obligatory joke, right? Okay. And I did my very best to degenderize this. So if I slip up and say he or she, just let it go. A person was walking down the beach and came upon, of course, a magic lamp half buried in the sand. The person extracted the lamp, shined it up, and sure enough, a genie appeared. And the person said, "Do I get 3 wishes?" Genie says, "Hard time for genies. We've had to cut back. You only get 1 wish. What's it going to be?" So the person takes out this big map and lays it out on the sand and says, "This is a map of the Middle East. My wish is that all the people in all these countries would stop fighting each other." The genie said, "Gadzooks. These folks have been fighting each other for thousands of years. I'm a genie. I'm good, but I'm not that good. Make another wish." So the person thought and said, okay. I've been looking all my life for the perfect mate. I want somebody that will love me unconditionally. I want somebody in good health. I want somebody who has a great sense of humor. I want somebody who will be my helper in everything I do, support me, put me number 1 at everything. I want someone that will love me deeply, faithfully. Someone who is not a smoker, someone who is not a drinker. I want the perfect mate. The genie said, "Can I look at that map again?" So I'm going to talk about 3 things today. I'm going to talk about the impossibility of peace, which is something you probably want to talk about at a peace conference, but I'm going to talk about the opposite of peace. I'm going to talk about the city of peace. It seems as we look at our community, as we look at our region, as we look at our nation, we look at our international relationships, we get overwhelmed. And it really does start to feel sometimes like peace is just impossible. There's just too much going on. There's too much negativity. There's vengeance. There's bad economics. There's bad history. There's bad relationships. And no 2 problems are exactly the same, so there's no magic bullet that fixes it all. Peace is impossible. I mean, it's nice to talk about, right? It's nice to hope for. It's nice to work for. We do it in our own little ways, but at night, just before we go to bed, if it crosses our mind, there's that fear, right? In the back of our heads that it's never really going to work. We're not going to be able to make it happen. It seems that peace is impossible between nations. Russia, China, North Korea, Canada. Who would have thought? It seems like nowadays peace is impossible even between groups. We've become so much more polarized than we used to be. Republicans won't talk to Democrats. Democrats won't talk to Republicans because you've got the wrong letter in front of your name. Not because you have bad breath or bad ideas, or you just have the wrong label. Conservatives and liberals, oil and water, can't talk, can't communicate. The housed and the homeless, the healthy and the unhealthy. We've become a society of polarized factions that cannot communicate with each other. And it goes even deeper than that. It goes down to the individual level. We can't talk to our neighbors civilly anymore. I mean, how many of you belong to Nextdoor? Okay? That sounded like a really great idea when it first came out. About 2 weeks later, I've got anonymous people calling people names. Neighbors, for crying out loud. You wouldn't walk to your back fence and call your neighbor over and say to their face what you would say to them on the site. We just don't talk to each other anymore. Or if we do, we talk to each other anonymously and sometimes viciously. Even further than that, family members. How many people in this room have a family member you haven't talked to in years? Yeah? I've got people that are really uncomfortable for me to talk to, whether it's because of political reasons or family reasons or whatever it is. It just seems like communication among people is diminished. But you'll notice the order in which I put those things. Nations, regions, groups, individuals. And I got to thinking, maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're starting at the wrong end. What if we talked about individuals and then groups and then regions and then nations? Communications, the real communication, is so important. When I was studying communications in college, communication theory taught me that when two human beings talk to each other under the best of circumstances, no distractions, no language barriers, two people sitting in a nice quiet room looking at each other face to face, only 30% of the meaning of what they're saying to each other gets through in the first pass. It's just the way we're wired. And that's the reason that we have to talk to each other over and over and over again until we finally understand what we're saying to each other. Yeah, I'm a science fiction fan, or at least I used to be before science fiction was superseded by actual science. But one of my favorite quotes is, how could we ever hope to speak to creatures from another planet when we haven't learned how to speak to dogs yet? Because those creatures are probably as different from us as dogs are from us. Hence, again, the need to be able to concentrate on actually communicating with another being before you can make any progress. The impossibility of peace because we just can't talk to each other. But you know, there is an opposite side of peace, and it's not what we always think it is. Ask somebody what the opposite of peace is. War. The opposite of peace is violence. The opposite of peace is bigotry. None of that is the opposite of peace. The true opposite of peace, the true adversary of peace is fear. Because fear drives all those other things. All those other things are symptoms of the opposite of peace. Abraham Maslow was a psychologist who talked about the hierarchy of needs of human beings. What human beings need to live. Well, first thing you gotta have is you gotta have air. After about 3 minutes, you're done. After that, you gotta have water. After that, you gotta have housing. After that, you have to have clothing. After that, everything else is what's called self-actualization. Once you can physically survive, you can start talking about things like peace. And we need to be self-actualized, communicating human beings before we can actually exercise the act of creating peace. whether it's at the individual level, the regional level, or the national level. Self-actualizing people tend to focus on problems outside themselves. They tend to have a clear sense of what is true and what is false. They're spontaneous and creative, and they are not bound too strictly by social conventions. In short, they are not fearful. The opposite of peace is fear, and everyone is afraid of something. I'm afraid of things. I can trace some of my fears back to my childhood. I grew up in a family that was cursed with alcoholism. There were years when I didn't know from day to day whether I would have a family the next day. My father was a truck driver. My mother was a waitress. We were far from wealthy. I didn't know that until one of my friends came to visit one day. I asked if they wanted a glass of water. Sure. So I got down what we used for water glasses, empty jelly jars that my mother had washed after we had consumed the jelly. That's the first time I realized that we were poor, because my friend was stunned that we were drinking from that. Another thing that made me fearful was, and this will be strange, my mom. Not because she beat me, not because she hurt me, not because she didn't love me, because she did love me. And she had high, high expectations of me. When I was in 3rd grade, she bought me a desk. She said, "This is your desk. You're going to be doing your homework here because someday you're going to college." "Okay, Mom. Here are your pencils. You're going to use these pencils to do your homework." "Okay, Mom." "Mom?" "Yes." "Pencils don't have any erasers. Where are the erasers?" "You don't make any mistakes. You don't need any erasers." I fear imperfection in myself. It's true. Everyone has a fear. Many people locally fear for things like water. Are we going to run out of water? Are our lawns going to go dry? Will I not be able to wash my clothes? Will I not be able to water my lawn? Am I going to run out of shelter? My job is so marginal that if something happens and I lose my job, I could wind up under a bridge somewhere. Because housing is expensive in Paso Robles. This area is rated #1, not just Paso, but San Luis Obispo area, is rated #1 as the most expensive place in America to retire to. Other people are afraid of not having adequate clothing, not having adequate employment, not having adequate health care. When you get sick and you have to choose between paying the rent and paying your doctor, that's fear instilling. People are afraid for their safety. Will my home be burglarized? Will I be attacked? Will people that I don't understand or don't recognize or look different from me, will they represent a physical danger to me and my family? The opposite of peace is fear. And then I thought, what does the city of peace look like? What would Paso Robles look like as the city of peace? What does all this talk and observation about fear and peace have to do with the city that people want me to kind of help lead? You know, back in 1991, I'm getting to be that age where I'm going, back in 1991. When I was on the council the first time, we did a massive reconsideration and restructuring of what we call our general plan. The general plan is the overall plan for development in the city of Paso Robles, and there have been several iterations since then. But in 1991, we had not updated our general plan since 1971, and the community had not adapted and changed to the way it was progressing to that point in time. And so we went through this massive process of updating the general plan for the city. Lots of public hearings, lots of input from people, lots of discussion with the council. One of the things that the council discussed was the fact that we didn't ever want to lose our rural quality. And for weeks we talked about that, preserving our rural quality, our rural quality. People were afraid, they were fearful we'd lose our rural quality. Until finally somebody said, "What do you mean by rural quality?" Well, we all know what we mean by rural quality, right? So one by one the council started describing what they meant by rural quality. 5 different ideas of what rural quality really is. And that's when we realized we weren't communicating. We thought we were using the same words, we were using the same passion, the same motivation, and we thought we were getting through to each other, but we weren't. And so we had to take a step back and say, for the purpose of these discussions, what do we mean by rural quality? What do we mean by quality of life in the city of Paso Robles? We love Paso Robles. We want Paso Robles to stay a wonderful place to live. What makes Paso Robles a good place to live? That was the central question. And after tons of input, tons of public hearing, tons of discussion, we came up with a definition for quality of life in the city of Paso Robles that has survived fairly unscathed to this day. We said the quality of life in the city of Paso Robles is defined as being a place where the great majority of people can live, work, and recreate. Where people don't have to pick up and drive 30 miles to go to work, where they don't have to pick up and drive 30 miles to go shopping, where they've got something to do in the evenings and on the weekends with their families. That's what creates high quality of life. And that's what we've tried to instill as time has gone by. We didn't realize at the time we were doing that general plan update that we weren't just dealing with the economy of the community. We were dealing with fear. The fear that we and our kids wouldn't have a place to live in our own city, the fear there would be no jobs, no money for our families, the fear we would have to travel to other places to enjoy life, the fear that no one was listening and nobody cared. And so I ask you to imagine the city of Paso Robles as a city of peace. A place where people wake up in the morning and their first thoughts are not, I can't afford food. I don't have a job. I can't find work. I can't pay the rent. And worst of all, I'm alone. Nobody listens and nobody cares. Now, I would love to tell you all about the wonderful things I believe we've done over the last 6 years, and it's true, but I'm out of time. But what I want you to know that the city of Paso Robles is a city of peace, and it's all about a city of citizens of peace. And that's the bedrock for all the rest. Because if we are a city of peace, citizens of peace, then we have the tools to work towards a region of peace, a nation of peace, a world of peace. And so we have a job, maybe one you didn't realize you had when you walked in today. We have the joyous responsibility to build a city of peace by banishing the things that create fear in our citizens. By addressing that fear, we're draining the power of what truly is the opposite of peace. And by doing that, we create true peace here and in our world. And getting back to my genie story, now that I really know what I'm doing here, I'd like to look at that general plan again.
Thank you, Steve. And there are a lot of things going on in the city of Paso Robles that are promoting that and taking care of people here. And we're very grateful, Steve, for the work that the city's doing in organizing some of our issues around town and helping out. So do you think this day was worth doing? All right. I certainly do. And do we think we have a better idea about what it means we say, oh, let's have peace? Better idea? Yeah, I think so. And I really appreciate everybody being here today. Paul, thank you very much. All the speakers, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the sponsors that allowed this to be put on. And thank you for being here. We look forward to doing this another time next year. Thank you.
And we want to thank Dan. He put this together with all kinds of different people and organized them, and he's done a fantastic job.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.